one, Kouri Richins is back in court. Well, she was in court last week for 2 days, but we got 3 videos here that we can watch. Now, she wants to suppress evidence for the trial. Some of the evidence that she wants to have suppressed is the phone that was taken from her back in 2022. There were oral statements that she made a day afterwards while she was being detained while they were searching her house. And then there were more oral statements that she made when the new detective on the case came by to introduce himself. And, you know, there was some dispute about whether or not he knew if she had an attorney representing her or not. They had him testify in front of the court, I think a couple months back. And when they asked him, did you know that Kouri Richins had representation at the time? And he was like, oh, you know, I was just new in the case. I came by to basically introduce myself. And I mean, I didn't know that she had an attorney present. It wasn't until halfway through, I think the mom came in and was like, oh yeah, shouldn't there be an attorney here? So they want to have those statements to the sergeant suppressed. And then also there's this interesting part, handwritten statements as well. Apparently the police, they were able to get this orange notebook that was seized from her home. Now, I wonder if this orange notebook is the same one as the diary that the state keeps referring to. Apparently Kouri Richins kept a diary the months, days leading up to Eric Richins' death. And I think afterwards too. I was trying to find exact statements about the diary, but I can't find them in my notes. I know I wrote them down. I just don't know where it is, but I just remember that they kept talking about this diary that Kouri Richins has. And I'm like, oh my gosh, please don't tell me that she was documenting her crimes. Like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? So I don't know if it's the same diary. However, initially when this diary was taken, she was trying to say that like, oh, well, that diary is actually physician-patient privilege and you guys don't have a right to go through it and look at it at all. So I think what she was trying to say was maybe she was keeping a diary to keep track of her mental health because her therapist told her to. I don't know. It sounds like bullshit to me, but you know what? The defense, when they finally they responded to one of the state's motion, or I think they responded to the state's reply, and they decided to withdraw that physician-patient privilege from the diary because maybe it is bullshit, you know? Interesting. I don't know. Kouri Richins is the type of person who would just throw anything she can. And like, I don't know, she's just like grasping at straws here. Very interesting person. Hi, Michael Pickle. How are you doing today? Game it live. Hello. Hi, Northwest. How's it going? Yeah, we have 3 different videos to watch today. They're all kind of short, not too long. Now, I want to see how the videos might relate to some of the documents that I want to read, or I might do a separate stream or separate video for that because I was reading through the documents. Oh my God, dude, they're so fucking interesting. Oh gosh, court documents are so interesting. But yeah, last week, I do apologize. I did not stream last week. I was very busy catching up with a lot of the other cases. Like I was trying to catch up with Koberger. Like, oh my gosh, guys, if you guys look at the Koberger case, there's just so many documents that like they uploaded. Catching up with Koberger, trying to catch up with Blake Lively stuff, trying to catch up with Kouri Richins, Donna Adelson, like just catching up with everyone and periodically checking on Sarah Boone to see if anything's happening with Sarah Boone. There was a new thing that was uploaded on Sarah Boone, but it's just like appeal stuff that yeah, we're just administration stuff. So trying to catch up with all that. And then also last week, there's 2 days of hearings for Karen Reed that I was like watching, you know, like, oh my gosh, last week was wild. So I did not stream, but oh my gosh, I was very, very busy. I thought about streaming Karen Reed, but I was like, no, it's going to be 2 days of like really long days of hearing. Like, that's a long time. Then I'm just going to watch it on my own. But anyways, hi, Believe. How are you doing today? How's it going? Hi, Moondog. Oh, it's good to see you guys. So hopefully today on Twitch, after when we're doing true crime stuff, maybe we can play some games because I miss playing games, okay? Believe says there's a new Chilla game. It's like a horror game that I really love. And then, I don't know, maybe we'll do some more rivals. We'll see. It's been a while. So, all right, guys, let's get into Kouri Richins. So we are at motion to suppress. I believe the defense is going to make the argument first, and then the state's going to reply, and then defense is going to reply afterwards, and then we'll see what the judge says. But I don't think the judge made a ruling yet based on what I see on the video title. All right, guys. Rewind it back a little bit here. How are you guys doing, by the way? How is everyone? There was a new fire that popped up in California somewhere, but luckily they were able to extinguish it pretty quickly because there's this notification alert that I got. I was like, oh man, I haven't heard that notification alert in a while. And it's from the watch alert, which basically reports you where the fires are and all that. But yeah, luckily they were able to get rid of it. And we are all good. We're all good, but it was, you know, kind of close by. And I was like, oh gosh, please no more fires, please. It's just been crazy over here. It's going. Good to hear that it's going. Are you playing new games? I feel like a lot of people are playing Monster Hunter right now.
let's begin.
Oh gosh, I love this courtroom so much. Like we got beautiful video. We got, I think audio feed is pretty good. The judge, I love the judge on this case. Oh my gosh, every time I'm watching this, I'm like, I look forward to the judge. I look forward to the prosecutor. Mr. Bloodworth, the state prosecutor in this case, oh my gosh, reading his motions are so fucking entertaining. It reminds me of the Ben Chu motions back in the Depp v. Heard case. Ben Chu was always very snarky, throwing some jabs, you know. It's entertaining to read it sometimes. And I think the defense was like, yo, what the fuck? This guy's really coming after us. So when we reply back to him, we need to be just as snarky, because at first when I was reading some of the defense's motion, she has like new attorneys now that started representing her about, it's been almost like half a year now. I feel like when I was reading their motions are just like, you know, they're just writing their motions and stuff like that. I feel like they weren't really throwing too much jabs at the state. But like when the state was amping it up a little bit, I think the defense decided to amp it up too. And then like now there's like blowing jabs at each other in these motions. So it's very entertaining to read. But if I was on the receiving end, I don't know, man, I might start crying or something like that. Yeah, the new Chili game looks interesting. Yeah, you're playing some Monster Hunter. Nice. How is it? Did you get to finish Dynasty Warriors? I'm so sad that it's not split screen co-op, because what kind of game is that? Dynasty Warriors, no split screen co-op? That's how you do it. All right, guys, so we're going to be in court today, and hello.
With defendant's motion to suppress statements and evidence, that's docket 747. Who's arguing this one for the defense? Business.
Is that Miss Nestor?
So it's 4 categories or 4 buckets, right?
Yes, sir.
The first is a request for an order suppressing all evidence obtained from a phone that was seized from, I mean, the motion says Ms. Richins' person, but that's not actually what you think happened.
Correct.
On April 13, 2022.
Correct.
Right. They said that the phone was actually left in the car. Kouri Richins was pulled out of the car while they were searching her home. And then afterwards, they're like, oh, hey, like, go get your phone. And she went to her car, grabbed her phone, and then the defense said that apparently the detectives made Kouri Richins unlock her phone and told her that she wasn't free to go at that point.
Correct. That's their theory, that it was seized from her person.
Right.
Not mine.
Can I ask you about Detective Maynard and Detective Woody's testimony and see if you see it differently?
Okay.
I love this judge.
I look at their testimony and I see that Ms. Richins is approaching her home. Detective Maynard stops her.
She was leaving the home, I think.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, all right. He stops her, puts her in the front seat of his vehicle and says, you got to wait with me for a few minutes, right?
Right.
He observes her phone in her car.
Right.
Detective, either he tells Detective Woody or she also observes the phone in Ms. Richins' car.
That was not explained.
Okay. But at some point, Detective Woody knows the phone is in the car.
Hi, Melissa.
Because after Detective Maynard says, you can go, Detective Woody says, hey, do you want to walk over to the car and give me your phone?
Yeah.
And then eventually, Ms. Richins reaches in, grabs the phone, gives it to Detective Woody.
Correct.
I don't know what's been going on, but I haven't been having any acne breakout lately. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I'm like, is it my diet? Is it like, what's going on here? Because I've definitely been drinking, especially when I went to Italy. I was drinking wine when I was there. Usually wine might dry out my skin and stuff like that, but I'm trying to figure out what it is right now, because I've been having clear skin. I mean, I still have all the acne scars that I got to get rid of, but I'm like, oh my gosh, clear skin. Oh, it's so nice. Why have they never identified her boyfriend? They just say her paramour. They actually have. We have the boyfriend's name. It was mentioned, Mr. Grossman, that's the last name, was mentioned in some of the other hearings before. And then I read oh gosh, I don't remember where. I think it was one of the state's court docs where they literally said the paramour's name. I think his name is like Robert Grossman or something like that. But they barely mentioned him. But his full name was mentioned in one of the recent state court docs. So we know who he is. I wonder if he's going to be testifying for the trial. It'll be very interesting. It's always interesting to hear them testify, you know, the paramours. Oh, you're doing the hammer stuff in Monster Hunter? Fun. Do they still have the little mochi thing with the little cats dancing when you order the food? I know, the judge's voice is chocolate. Chai, how are you doing today? Oh my god, Chai, your baby looks so cute. She's like a real human being now. Like, oh my gosh, she's so adorable. She's got like little like, twinkly, sparkly eyes. Thank you so much for this 68 months. I appreciate your support, Chai. Thank you so much. Thank you. You haven't heard of it? Yeah, they don't really mention it very often, but it's like it'll pop up here and there. Like you'll hear like Grossman in some of the hearings, and then The full name was written in one of the states' motion. We might cover that motion today or a different video. I'm trying to see what they are going to cover in the court. If it's pertinent, then I'll cover the motions today. If it's not, I might just do a separate video or something like that.
This is happening in the context of grabs the phone, your phone, and then eventually Ms. Richins reaches in, grabs the phone, gives it to Detective Woody.
Correct.
This is happening in the context of a warrant to seize the phone from her person, right?
Arguably,
I think that's what it says,
because
isn't it?
my position is that would have only applied if she were in the home, the way the warrant was written. I think her person had to be in the home because the warrant is written that way. But I understand the position that they're making, that the warrant covered her person, which it did.
Right.
But if you read that warrant in context, it says at the premises of. I don't know if that makes a difference, but I think the warrant would have only applied to her person if she were actually on the premises. That's how I read the warrant.
Okay, so I have, it sounds like we agree on the facts.
We do.
Yep.
So I have two questions regarding the law.
Okay.
The warrant says what it says. Why isn't the scope of that warrant sufficient to allow them to seize the phone that was within her reach, undisputably, when she was in the vehicle when they stopped her? Second, even if that's not the case, why doesn't the automobile exception say they can grab the phone that is plainly in view in that automobile before they give her the car back to drive away?
Well, the first question about why they couldn't have seized it from her when they first pulled her over. Okay, the fact is they didn't, and a detention intervened between when they pulled her over and could have voluntarily asked her for her phone.
Doesn't that detention just maintain the status quo, though?
No, the detention requires probable cause and Miranda, which was not given. So,
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
right. You're talking about the seizure right now, just the phone?
Yeah.
Okay. So, when she was first pulled over, it is my understanding from my recollection of Detective Maynard's testimony that he said it was in the console or on the console of her car.
Yeah.
Now, just to recap for you guys again really quickly, police had a search warrant to search her house. So police came and they saw Kouri Richins leaving the property and they were like, oh, wait, that's Kouri Richins. And so while there were cops searching the house, one of the police officers like U-turned and then pulled Kouri Richins over, turned the lights on, and basically was like, oh, hey, like you're, I guess they told her she was like under custody. And so they took her from her car. Her phone was left in the car, by the way. Took her from the car and then brought her back to where the property was. And then at some point they were like, oh, hey, go get your phone. So she went back to her car, got the phone, and then went back to law enforcement.
As I understood, it was like sitting in the cup holder in between the seats.
Which is actually not on her person. That's in her vehicle,
Fair enough, but it's within her reach.
right? But it's not contraband and it's not a gun.
Well, it's not a gun.
Right.
I'm not sure it's not contraband. Here, we have a warrant to investigate aggravated murder, right?
Right.
Elements of that crime include pecuniary gain and administration of poison. Securing fentanyl is analogous to drug distribution. And in the drug distribution line of cases, phones.
I just want to let you guys know that the court audio cuts off a little bit because whenever someone's not speaking, basically the microphone cuts off. So sometimes if there's like a long pause between the judge's words, it might cut off like the beginning of his words. In case you guys are like, oh, what the fuck is going on? Why does it sound weird? Hi, Marie. How are you doing today? How's it going? And I think the defense was trying to argue that contraband is something that constitutes, like I think she was trying to say that it's not contraband. The phone is not contraband because contraband is something that's like, I forgot what, oh God, I wish I had their motion. They like cited a case where contraband was like, I think it was like guns or drugs or like CP or I forgot what it was. I'm gonna have to look it up if it's bothering me.
Phones are contraband.
Well, they've said under sworn testimony that at the time this warrant was being executed, she wasn't a suspect.
Well,
That's their own testimony.
fair, but the same witness, I think we're talking about Detective O'Driscoll, right?
Right.
He says we had three possibilities.
Right.
Accident, suicide,
Right.
murder.
Right.
One of those three possibilities involves securing and administering a poison. So why isn't the phone contraband? Under probable cause that it was used to communicate with sources of controlled substances that were used.
At the time, they did not know what was on the phone. They had no idea what was on the phone.
Well, certainly, that's why they want to seize and
Right.
search it.
Right. The warrant gave them a realm of authority of how to get the phone. They didn't use that authority. They pulled her over, left the phone in a vehicle that was not covered under the warrant, at all. Removed her from the vehicle. Why they did or didn't do it, that was their choice. They also could have left her at the house that the warrant covered, and that was their choice to let her leave the home and pull her over 2 blocks away, out of the side of the house. So that was all their decision-making process. Once they put her in that police car, the phone is no longer on her person. They haven't seized it yet. It's in a vehicle that's not covered by a warrant. They know that too. So the only way they know...
Oh, I found it. Sorry, it was bothering me. The state asserts, this is a defense's reply, by the way. The state asserts that the Carroll Doctrine would have enabled them to search the car without a warrant. The Carroll Doctrine only applies when there is contraband suspected to be in the vehicle. In other words, something which cannot be lawfully possessed, like drugs, CP, etc. A cell phone is not contraband, therefore the Carroll Doctrine is inapplicable in this case. However, it seems like from the statements that the judge has made so far, it seems like he's leaning towards the phone being contraband. So he needs to have her explain why it's not contraband. Hello?
It's not covered by a warrant.
Hi,
they
Nicole.
know that too. So the only way, they know they can't reach in and get it, so they direct her to do it. They don't give her an option.
I think they could have reached in and gotten it under the automobile exception, couldn't they?
Well, it's not an arrest. She's not under, they didn't have a warrant for her arrest. There's no automobile exception.
Well, no, but they're about to hand the car back to her when they release her from the detention.
Right, even
And
a
they know
stronger
the
argument.
evidence that the warrant is covering is in the car. Wouldn't the automobile exception, well, you're allowed to seize it so that they don't run away with it.
But they didn't. They didn't seize the car. They gave her the keys.
No, I'm sorry. Pronoun trouble. My apologies.
Right.
The phone.
The phone they can't just pull out under the automobile exception if they're handing her back the keys and saying, drive back to your house. They have to go in and search the car to get the phone. They have to enter the vehicle with their hands and grab the phone. So that's why they told her to do it. And at the time they told her to do that, it was not on her person. So it was not on her person. It was not covered by a warrant. It was not in connection with an arrest. There's no arrest warrant. There's a detention for purposes of Miranda analysis and for custodial analysis, but there's not an arrest. So there's no automobile exception here. She wasn't being detained. The car wasn't being seized. None of that automobile exception law applies. So what they did was searched a vehicle using her hands to do it, directing her to hand them something out of a vehicle they did not have authority to grab, and they grabbed it. And that's our position.
Okay. Let's stay with that time frame.
Okay.
Okay. Between when Detective Maynard stops her and when he says, okay, you can get out of the car and go back to your car, and Detective Woody says, you can go back to the house if you want. You want to come with me and get your phone. Okay,
Right.
so that time period.
Well, she actually said Maynard was going to follow her back.
Fair enough.
So still in detention, basically.
Yeah. Candidly, I think there is a break. I think you have a fair point that a reasonable person would objectively believe that they were detained during that period of time between the stop, Maynard saying you can't go yet, and then, okay, you can go now. I agree.
I wish a certain judge would learn from the manners of this judge. I think this judge does a really good job at doing the back and forth with the attorney without having it be super contentious, and not being super aggressive and rude. I like the way he does things. And then like he'll say things too to acknowledge like, hey, like you have a good argument for this. However, how about this argument? What do you have to say about this? I don't know. I like the way that he does things. I like how the way he communicates with attorneys. It's like a good back and forth, and we don't feel like the judge just hates whichever attorney's on the other side. Certain judge.
Agree with you. That was a period in which she was in custody.
Definitely.
I think it ends when they give her the car back.
Except for the fact that Woody says he will follow you back, which doesn't give her an option to go to the store. It says go back and he's following you, which he did. He followed her back in a police car
Isn't
with
there
lights.
a line from that recording, though, where I think it's in the transcript, where Detective Woody says, I don't know, you go wherever you want, go shopping if you need to.
But then after that, she says he's going to follow you back.
Okay.
So
I don't know that rises to the level of custody. I mean, no guns are drawn, no handcuffs, no show of force. Like, they're giving her the car back.
she pulls up to her house, and I believe Detective Maynard testified there were at least 10 uniformed officers all in her driveway. An officer comes up to her, holding her own possession that he took from her, and says, give me your passcode. There was no, would you like to give me your passcode? Would you like to help me in my investigation of you? You have a choice here. You have Miranda rights. It was give me your passcode from an armed police officer while surrounded by armed police officers in a house after she had just been detained for 20 minutes.
Didn't you skip a couple of steps there, though? Wasn't it, hey, I need to get some numbers out of my phone. Okay, give me your passcode.
Maynard disagreed with that. He said she didn't ask for numbers, that he just asked her for the passcode. I'm quite sure of that.
Okay. My apologies.
No worries. He said he just came straight up to her and asked her for the passcode. That was his testimony. And then according to his own report, she
Do we have body cam? I think we have some recordings. I don't know if the recordings from this day though. Do we have body cam though? God, I love watching body cam stuff. I really like the way, yeah, right? I really like this judge. I like the way he talks out his thoughts. Yeah, and listens to the lawyers, making things as clear as possible. Yes, Marie, I agree with you. I totally agree. I love judges like this. I love judges that are inquisitive. I also like the Koberger, the new judge in Koberger's case as well. Apparently, he's an appeal judge, so the way that he conducts his court is kind of like an appeal, an appeal process. Basically, the attorneys will talk, and then like sometimes the judge will interrupt and like ask questions. They'll be like back and forth, which is, I don't know. I think it's really interesting to watch that. It's kind of a way to see what the judge is thinking and where they're at, and then maybe at some point maybe they will change their mind later down the road as the attorney's trying to convince them. But at this point, it seems like the judge is not leaning towards the defense's argument.
She was then released from his custody once she gave him the passcode.
Right. Now, he explained that we can acknowledge that he explained that he misused that word, custody.
I'm sure he thinks that now.
He also said after I gave Kouri the numbers, I didn't have any other interactions with Kouri. It wasn't that he just grabbed the passcode and walked away. He gave her the number she wanted out of the phone.
Hold on just 1 minute. Yes.
Wait, he gave her the number she wanted on the phone.
So the testimony was that he asked for the passcode and he testified that he did it to enable them to get access to the phone.
Right.
She gave him the passcode and then shortly thereafter she said, hey, there's some numbers in there. Can I get the numbers? And he said yes. And that was his last interaction with Kouri. I believe that's the testimony.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, are we moving with the orange notebook?
Okay. The notebook.
The notebook?
The orange notebook.
Is this notebook the diary? That's what I want to know. Or is this notebook something completely different? Something tells me this is the diary one, though. Jesus, imagine keeping a diary that could be used against you later on in court.
Sir.
Which I think is the fourth category, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the first category is the phone.
I skipped one.
Second category is her giving the passcode,
Right.
that testimonial without Miranda.
Well, and the way you put it, everything else she said, if anything, at the home.
Correct.
Right.
And
I skipped over Detective O'Driscoll at the house on a
Yes.
different day.
Yes.
Okay, so coming back, I think there's no dispute, right? No guns drawn, no handcuffs. Consistent with my prior rulings on a different motion, the Sixth Amendment has not attached.
I believe that's probably correct, although I would like to make the position for the record that I think applying for the warrant may have triggered the Sixth Amendment. I realize that would be new law, but I would like to stand by that position.
You've preserved it for the record. Then when we come to the Fifth Amendment.
Wait, so let's see. So I think they're trying to say that she was not in custody, so the Sixth Amendment didn't attach. I always get Sixth and Fifth Amendment mixed up. Fifth and Sixth Amendment. Okay, Fifth Amendment is the self-incrimination one. Sixth Amendment, speedy trial. Oh, the counsel one. I think that's what applies to Kouri Richins here. Okay, self-incrimination and then counsel. All right, I'm gonna remember that.
Mr. Butler, can I just ask you a practical question?
Yes, sir.
Well, what the hell? Sorry, that was a different video.
Tell me why a reasonable person would objectively believe that they were detained while that interview at their home was happening. It's at her home. Her mother's present for at least part of it. There's no show of force.
Right.
There's nothing limiting her from being like, I got to go check on the kids. I need to go pick one of the kids up. I need to go shopping. I just don't want to talk to you anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, I recognize that officers are allowed under the law to use trickeries to some degree, but originally when they came into the house, it was, oh, we just want to introduce ourselves to you. We're trying to investigate, not being honest that they were there.
They are expressly allowed to do that.
Correct.
Yes.
I just conceded that.
Yeah.
However, there was a point at the interview where they do start
I'm detecting a little frustration here.
getting her to talk about things that are, clearly she has a right to assert. At that point, she has 2 officers sitting in her house. They are armed. They have advised that they're there. They have not told her you can end this whenever you want. They've not read her Miranda. They've not said you're free to go. And they continue the interrogation.
Can you cite me to any case that they had any duty to do any of that if she wasn't in custody?
Well, the question is whether she was in custody, right? If she believed she was not free to leave.
But if we look at Levin, as talked about in Fuller, right? I mean, there's just no objective indications that she's detained.
Well, you don't have to be in the police station to be in custody. You have 2 investigating detectives sitting there filming her, knowing that she had an attorney, which we've now established, because she said it to them.
Is that established though? I could have sworn we had 3 hearings about this where the detective was like, no, I didn't know that she had an attorney, or I wasn't told that she had an attorney. I'm new to this case. And like, what, did you look at the case file? He's like, oh no, I'm still new. I'm still looking over everything. I haven't gone through everything yet. I just went over there to introduce myself to her.
In the first, even before they got to the house, I pose that now we know even before they got to the house, they knew she had an attorney, despite what he testified to. But once they got
despite what he testified to. Okay, so there is a disagreement there.
In the house, that she asserted within the first 7 pages of the transcript, she referred to her attorney.
Okay.
So now they know that this is the same attorney that has previously asserted that she did not want her client interviewed outside of her presence. They have that in the case file. They've had conversations about that with the supervisor, according to our recent investigation. And they still continue to question her, knowing that a right to counsel has previously been asserted. So our position was that they either should have told her she still was under her assertion and was she withdrawing her assertion, made sure she knew she had her rights. They didn't do that.
Okay, I understand your position.
Yeah.
All right. The Orange Notebook.
Yes.
The state has conceded that when it was initially seized and opened, there was no warrant allowing them to do that.
Correct.
They then go on to argue, but wait a minute. There were subsequently multiple warrants that specifically referenced documents for the home in which the notebook was seized and opened.
Right.
And that they laid a foundation through the trustee, I forget that channel.
Hey man, here's the thing. If law enforcement, if they want to come into your house and start talking to you and you had a husband that died about a year ago, they're like, oh, you know what? I'm sorry, you guys can't come in. I'm too busy. No, don't be coming in here. I don't know, man. But, people don't know their rights, and they're like, oh, we see law enforcement. Okay, come on in, have some cookies, have some tea, and then you blab away, and then all of a sudden, that's going to be used against you later on in court.
Gentleman's capacity, but the caretaker
Wife
of the home.
the trustee.
Yeah.
I mean, the husband, I'm
of the
sorry.
trustee.
The husband of the trustee.
And they laid a factual foundation for nobody goes in that home without me. And the people that went in, if at all, were not there and did not rearrange anything like the Orange Notebook. So the status quo of that notebook would have been preserved until those subsequent warrants referencing documents.
So here's my
would have been
concern about that.
maintained.
Here's my concern about that. As you'll recall, when Detective O'Driscoll was on the stand, I specifically asked him, and you'll remember he had a complete absence of memory when I asked him this, but I specifically asked him on numerous occasions, what were these other warrants for? What were you looking for? I don't remember. I think a go bag on one of them. I can't recall. What about the warrant you saw a month ago? I can't recall. You can't remember what you did a month ago? No, I can't. So I could never get him to say the nature of what they were looking for when they had those 3 warrants. Now, documents could apply to People magazine. It could apply to your shopping list on the counter. It could apply.
I'd be mortified if my journal was read aloud to the world. Oh man, journal entries or what was the one with Jodi Arias again, where they voice messages? I think she had voice messages, and then they also had recordings of their sex stuff too. That was just played out loud in court. It was just oh my god, what the fuck?
Apply to advertisements for the pest control service down the street. Realistically, when you say a
But
warrant,
all of those things are limited by, and ultimately I think would be excluded by, the inherent limitation on the face of the warrant. That the scope is for investigation of aggravated murder, not for buying People magazine or pest services.
But that's my point, though. There's no way that they would have known, seeing an orange notebook in a drawer, that had anything to do, and we submitted still had nothing to do with what happened to Mr. Richins.
Well, but hold on.
So, like I said, I think, I'm not sure, but I think this orange notebook is Kouri Richins' diary that initially, law enforcement, when they were searching the house, I think they came across the orange notebook and they opened it and they were like, oh, wait, shit, I got to close it back up and get another warrant for this. So I think they conceded that that right there was something that they shouldn't have done. However, the state did argue that, well, that orange notebook would have been discovered at some point anyways, because they would have got more warrants later on down the road. And at some point they would have discovered the orange notebook anyways. That's the argument. But she's saying that, like, well, it's just an orange notebook. How would they know to go after the orange notebook? I don't know. I have no idea.
And this will come up later, perhaps.
Right.
See what the judge says.
But again, they're investigating aggravated murder.
Right.
One of the elements would be for pecuniary gain.
Right.
Monetary.
That requires investigation into the defendant's financial condition and financial transactions. And that's a realm in which documents in a home could be highly probative.
But an orange spiral children's school notebook, how is that going to be flagged if they hadn't already illegally opened it, read it twice?
Well, it was flagged the first time, so it's reasonable to say it would have been flagged ultimately.
Well, I mean, I think that's supposition. I mean, we don't know that. And they did not have any independent source to suggest that anything in that notebook had anything to do with this. And we actually submitted.
Well, actually, you know, if you are looking through someone's house and it is for financial fraud stuff, you would probably go through any paperwork, any paper trail that they might have, documents and all that stuff. Even if it was like a kid's looking notebook, right? You never know. People try to hide their evidence.
It doesn't have anything to do with it. It was,
Maybe, but that's a 401 issue.
right,
Okay, we'll get there.
yes.
I guess what I'm saying is, would you acknowledge that if they had the second, third, and fourth warrant they got on the day they were executing the first one, that they would have been able to open that notebook to see whether or not it had evidence of, for example, the pecuniary gain element of an aggravated murder charge?
Yes, if the first two warrants hadn't preceded it. Because my position is the first two warrants tainted every warrant that came after it.
I take this argument seriously, but I didn't see any foundation for the probable cause statements for warrants 2, 3, and 4 included information they learned when they improperly opened the orange notebook.
Well, warrant 2 absolutely did. Warrant 2 was the second warrant that he got while he was there, while they were there that day, just to cover the notebook.
Okay.
So he specifically referred in that warrant to the
Can you give me an
information.
exhibit number on that one?
Yes. it
Your Honor, I
is.
think we're talking about two different number twos, if you will.
Yeah.
The state has conceded that the search on May 8th, the
Mr. Bloodworth. I love Mr. Bloodworth.
initial search was outside the scope of a warrant. There was a second warrant issued on May 8th. The state has conceded that that second warrant bared information from the first search that exceeded the scope.
Right.
The state then references 4 warrants that occurred much later in time.
May 31, October 31, November 6, and December 16.
I'm sorry, I thought you were
Jesus.
talking about the second. I thought
I
you meant number
apologize.
2.
No.
Okay, all right.
I was insufficiently precise there.
No
So
worries.
4 subsequent search warrants between May 31, 2023.
I love this judge. You know, I love this judge. Instead of blaming and pointing his fingers at defense attorneys or any attorneys, he's like, you know what? It's my fault. I wasn't specific. Love this guy.
And December 16, 2024. Did those probable cause statements include any content from the orange notebook? I didn't see any foundation for that.
I don't think so, but I mean, if this is what they can do, then why couldn't you always remove a taint by just issuing so many warrants that eventually the taint's gone and you would get it? I mean, the taint's there from the beginning till the end is my position. Once they open that notebook and looked at it, that's it. It's been illegally seized for all time. And I don't think just going and getting 6 more warrants for the exact same home over the space of a year and finding nothing, nothing, and nothing justifies removing the taint. I just don't think it does.
I gave this some thought, and this is not the best hypothetical, but bear with me.
Okay.
Imagine that they were investigating drug distribution. And while doing that, they seized a stolen motorcycle without a warrant.
Right.
And they're like, rats. So then they went and wrote a warrant for stolen vehicles. Lo and behold, look at that. We would have found it anyways. That clearly would not be permissible, right? Because the whole basis for asking for the other warrant was information that they seized and obtained without the scope. Here, this isn't that. The subsequent warrants are much more broad than that and have a factual nexus to the crime that was under investigation the whole time.
But at that point, the notebook's in their possession. So why does it nunc-pro-tunc go back and eliminate the taint from when they seized it? Because there's subsequent warrants that they issued.
It wouldn't necessarily do that, but I'm not sure if we take out the first two warrants that you've shown that anything that occurred between seizing the notebook improperly on May 8th and the warrant on May 31 or October 31 creates any taint.
Well, then, if that's the case, the inevitable discovery rule will swallow the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine every time.
Well, it
I mean,
doesn't
why couldn't they
swallow it, it just eliminates it sometimes.
Hey, Lauren, how are you doing today? Hey, Corky, hey, everyone. I'm late. It's okay. You're not that late. We just got started-ish, kind of.
Okay.
I think that's the way it works. It's an exception.
Your Honor, we stand by our position that there was no independent source that notebook held any significance ever. The officer himself could not say that when they went in those other warrants after May 8th, that they were looking for a notebook, that they were looking for handwritten documents. He didn't say any of that. He said all he could remember was looking for a go bag, which, I mean, it was specifically referred to in the indictment. The warrant. And then the other ones, he had no recollection at all of what they were looking for. So I'm not convinced there would have been inevitable discovery. I think it takes supposition upon supposition upon supposition to say that they definitely would have opened the notebook, they would have found it, they would have found it significant, and for
Why
all
is
this.
that? On May 8th, before they found it, they didn't know it was there, right?
Right.
So why isn't the fact that they didn't know it was there before they found it on May 8th and found it on May 8th, why isn't that evidence that if they had gotten the warrant on May 8th that they eventually got on May 31, it would have played out the same way?
Because
They were
depending on
just
what they were-
doing a broad search in part of an investigation of
Well, that's what we
aggravated kidnapping.
That's what we couldn't get information on, is what were they searching for? If this was a notebook in a bedside drawer and they were searching for office paperwork, they may never have opened that drawer. That's what I could not get the officer to testify to because he refused to remember anything they did in the investigation. So had he remembered, then maybe that's a good point. But apparently, it's their burden to have a foundation that they were looking for handwritten school children notebooks. And they don't have that. And so we have to assume that if they were looking for a certain type of document, which I kept asking him, then they would have gone to where that document would be located, an office, in the garage, in the kitchen, but maybe not in the bedroom. So I just think it's a step too far to assume it would have been found, opened, read, and digested as significant. I think that it's just too far to go.
She's annoying me, but to be fair to her, she's trying damage for her client. Yeah. Be hard for me to ever be an attorney because I feel like I wouldn't be able to argue something wholeheartedly. Like the way they argue is so passionate and I fucking love it. But at the same time, it's like in my mind, if I truly don't think what I'm arguing is really, if I don't really believe in it wholeheartedly, like 100%, it'll be so hard for me to be up there and be super passionate. Yeah. And I think also the reason why you probably find her annoying is because the judge has just been super chill, and comparing her to the judge, she's a little bit more spicier. So it seems like it's unwarranted. But I get it. She's really, I think she's really annoyed with the testimony of the detectives.
Garage, in the kitchen, but maybe not in the bedroom. So I just think it's a step too far to assume it would have been found, opened, read, and digested as significant. I think that it's just too far to go, and that the taint stands as it is right now.
Okay, I understand your position. All right, it's your motion. You get the last word on this one. Let me hear from the state.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they decided to separate the videos. We're going to go to the state now. Mr. Bloodworth, I believe, is going to be arguing. Do I have it sped up? Oops. Let's slow it down. He speaks pretty fast.
Does the state sitting here today intend to admit any words that Ms. Richins said during the period when she was in Detective Maynard's car?
I don't know why the captions aren't showing up. They're on. Caption on. I don't know.
Through when she got back in her own vehicle.
Your Honor, the state intends to admit blurts.
Okay.
The state does not intend to admit any responses to any form of interrogation or any question designed to elicit a testimonial statement.
Do those blurts come after Detective Maynard said something?
No, Your Honor. The blurts come in response to Detective Woody explaining why.
Maybe if I refresh her, because the captions are on the right side, but they're just not appearing on the screen.
Mr. Bullardorf, can I just ask you a practical question?
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Does the state sitting here today,
Okay, so the state is going to admit blurts, not any responses to any type of interrogation of any form. Where was I? I don't know. Something about Detective Woody. I think I'm around here. Okay. Oh, it's here. I just had to refresh it. Nice. Yay, we got the captions here. Hi, Brian.
Explaining
How are
why
you?
they're there.
How's it going?
okay,
They're not questions. They weren't designed to elicit a response. It was the defendant trying to publish a narrative.
okay.
Ain't she a good storyteller?
I think that whole time, though, is not a custodial interrogation within the meaning of the word as it relates to the Fifth Amendment.
Put the interrogation piece aside for a moment. I think a reasonable person would not have believed they were free to go during that period of time.
Your Honor, possibly, but that's only one of the four Stansbury factors. Even if the court were to make that finding that a reasonable person didn't think they were free to go, that does not mean there is custody within the meaning of the Fifth Amendment.
Well, if they're not free to go, and a law enforcement officer starts asking them questions designed to elicit responses related to the investigation,
Sure.
starts to look like a Fifth Amendment problem.
Your Honor, well, you've brought interrogation back into...
Indeed.
When we were isolating custody, but I think the court does need to analyze, it is custodial interrogation. I don't know if we can break those two kind of concepts up.
Well, the reason I say we could break it up is I can imagine an instance where someone is detained under these circumstances to maintain the integrity of the home that's about to be searched. Detective Maynard is stone-faced, looking out the windshield, says nothing, and the person detained blurts out some relevant or damaging information.
Oh, God,
There,
what'd she
I would
say?
understand if the state was like, they weren't interrogated. They volunteered a bunch of information. Here, though, there was some back and forth, whether they were questions or prompts or just comments made by Detective Maynard or Detective Woody to keep Ms. Richins talking. I mean, the devil's in the details on that, but in terms of was she free to go, would an objective person straight up told her she was not. You need to stay with me for a bit. You gotta stay in the car for a bit. Just stay here.
Your Honor, I agree that an objective person would find they were not free to go in that instance, and I don't think that matters much, if at all, to your analysis.
It matters to the custodial part of custodial investigation.
No, Your Honor, it's objective indicia of arrest, which is different than whether or not you're free to go. In search warrant detention cases, there's routinely detentions of 3+ hours, where in most of those cases, a suspect is detained. At this point, Ms. Richins isn't a suspect, where suspects are detained for 3 or more hours, and there is no custody as it relates to the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, but forgive me, what's the case in, it's one of the cases, I can't remember the names, there are a lot of cases cited, but one of the cases cited is a similar, sit in the front seat of my car, we'll have a conversation. But in those cases, the officer tells the suspect or the detained person, you can leave whenever you want. This is the exact opposite of that. She was told, you cannot leave.
Your Honor, the you cannot leave fact pattern is the typical fact pattern in warrant detention cases. You know, you cannot leave, you cannot go back in your house, you have to stay here. We want to safely execute this warrant or fully execute this warrant.
But typically in those situations, you don't start interviewing the suspect.
Correct, and that did not occur here, particularly with Detective Maynard, who really didn't want to, if you give the recording a fair listen, he wanted nothing to do with talking to the
Right.
defendant.
No, I appreciate it.
He asked her if she was hot, he asked her when her kids come home from school, and he asked her who else was in the house. That was all he asked her, no other prompts.
Okay. Have you listed anywhere the blurts that you seek to admit from this time period?
Your Honor, I
I don't think so. I didn't see any of the blurts.
think we have, and I'm trying to think where. It might be in our 404B. It might be in some upcoming papers we're about to file. The blurt
Yeah,
is
I don't think I read anything about the blurts. I feel like I would have remembered the phrases. Because I want to know, what did she say?
essentially when the defendant is informed that the ME's toxicology results showed fentanyl in Eric Richins' blood.
This is coming from Detective Woody, right?
This is coming from Detective Woody. She said, we're searching your house. We're looking for fentanyl. It's dangerous.
Right.
You have kids coming in and out the house. The defendant said something like, fentanyl? What is that? Cut crack? That's the blurt.
Okay. That's helpful context. I appreciate that. Talk to me about the phone. Do you,
God, she pretended to not know what fentanyl was. Meanwhile, we got text messages between her and the drug dealer, and she's trying to procure it. Was she trying to say that she's procuring it for Eric because he made her do it? Because I don't know. I feel like she's had so many narratives out there. It's hard for me to keep track. Which is what? I know at some point, I think she tried to say that Eric was a drug user, a heavy drug user. She accused Eric of smuggling drugs, but then he would put it in Kouri's suitcase because he didn't give a fuck about her, and then like she might get caught or something. I don't know. She even accused Eric of like forcing her to procure drugs for her. I don't know. There's just been so many statements out there by Kouri Richins that I just don't know. It's hard to keep track. If you guys remember, let me know.
Am I summarizing your position regarding the automobile exception correctly? The automobile exception allowed law enforcement to seize the phone that was visible, we'll say in the cup holder, in the console, in the automobile, before they handed the automobile back to the person who was subject to the warrant for seizure of the phone.
Yes, Your Honor, the state agrees with the court's analysis. The state thinks it could, the detectives could have lawfully seized that phone in many ways. I think it was voluntarily turned over. I think they could have seized it pursuant to the warrant.
Hi, Risty Lou. She didn't even write the book. She paid someone to write it and slapped her name on it. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, it's a kid's book. I don't think it's like long or anything like that. Should have been easy for her to write, no? I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating writing kids' books. Yeah, she said that he was making her get them for him. Like you said, she told a bunch of stories.
I think they could have seized it pursuant to
Kouri.
the automobile exception and inevitable discovery. We ultimately got warrants for the phone as well. So
What about my question to Ms. Nestor about it's in arm's reach? I mean, is a warrant to seize some, items on a person, in the court's view, it's reasonably read as, well, that also includes stuff within arm's reach when you encounter them.
Your Honor, I think that's a correct statement of the law. I think when Detective Maynard walked up to Ms. Richins' driver's side window and saw her and the phone right there within arm's reach, he could have certainly seized it pursuant to the warrant.
Okay. In your view, is the fact that they did it after detaining her for a bit and then releasing her, is that of any consequence?
I don't think it's of any constitutional consequence, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. Then we get to the house.
I mean, of course he's going to say that. I'm not going to make an argument for the defense. Of course I don't think it's there's any constitutional consequences.
I understand the state's position to be clearly not in custody.
Correct, Your Honor. I think the court was right when it stated even if she was in custody at the stop, there was a break.
Right.
She
Hi,
got in
Kay.
her car. It's recorded twice on the transcript of Detective Woody's audio, where Detective Woody informs the defendant, you can go anywhere and do whatever you want. And the defendant could have driven anywhere and chose to drive home. That is a break.
Okay. And then once she gets to the home, no guns drawn, no handcuffs, nobody.
Wait, Detective Woody, he tells the defendant, you can go anywhere, do whatever you want. The defendant could have driven anywhere and chose to drive home. That is a break. Was that after she gave them the phone?
We blocked her car in. There were none of the 11 factors are present.
That is correct, Your Honor. They are not present. And to touch back on the discussion of the passcode, because that's really the testimonial statement at issue here is the passcode to the phone.
Right.
I think it is clear from the context of the recorded part of the discussion at the stop, and it is clear from Detective Maynard's testimony in the court, we provided the court with a transcript, that the defendant, wanted contacts out of her phone. Detective Maynard asked her for the passcode to the phone, opened the phone, and then provided her the content.
Oh, okay. That's what the defense attorney was saying earlier, because I felt like this wasn't in any of the motions, in the defense motion or the state's reply. I felt like the defense made it seem like, well, Kouri was in custody. They were searching her house, and then they told her to go get her phone, and then they forced her to put the passcode in. And I was like, oh, sounds kind of fucky. I don't know. Forcing someone to put their passcode in? But then he's saying that the only reason why he got the passcode from Kouri is because Kouri wanted contacts out of her phone. Now, since Kouri gave him the passcode to the phone, does that mean that he's allowed to use it and search through it instead of doing the long way where like they have to get this like machine trying to figure out the passcode and all this stuff? Okay, we're getting like, this is like different context.
The contacts.
How much does based on Chelsea Gibson's testimony, if I recall correctly, through the course of the investigation, the Summit County received a forensic download of the phone done without the benefit of the passcode and only accessed it after the point in time, I think at the end of 2022.
Right, because I think the other way would just be, okay, well, she's obviously not going to give us the passcode in a, you know, in a different world. She wouldn't have given us the passcode. We would have took it in anyways, and then gotten some sort of like, you know, passcode iPhone, you know, thing where they're able to get access at some point. Knowing Kouri Richins, I don't know, her password might be like 1111.
In which they had the technical ability to read it or to crack a phone without the benefit of the passcode.
That's correct, Your Honor. And I guess to the court's point that having the passcode is somewhat moot, that even if the court were to have suppressed it, the state accessed the phone ultimately without using the passcode.
Okay. All right. The Orange Notebook.
Yes, sir.
Am I understanding the state's position correctly?
You are, sir, and I think the operative point is, well, let me back up a step, right?
Back it up.
The warrant requirement, you know, is to guard against police misconduct. And I think the court has seen, in fact, the court has signed throughout this case numerous warrants, right? I think the sheriff department's conduct in getting warrants throughout this case shows good faith, if nothing else, right? And this is no different. And the fact that a detective on the very initial May 8th search looked at the notebook gives the court every reason to believe that on any of the 4 subsequent searches, a detective, probably that very same detective, would have gone to the same notebook for the exact same reasons.
Right. Okay. The scope of the investigation was the same at all. It was the same crime, the same potential elements, right?
Correct.
As I recall, the investigation began as investigation of aggravated murder, correct?
It does, Your Honor, and the state filed the aggravated murder charge on May 8th and got that search warrant and the arrest warrant all simultaneously, all related to that same investigation.
Okay. All right, I understand the state's position. Anything else on this motion?
Not unless you have any other questions.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, that was short. Now we're going to go back to the defense. All right, defense, you got the last word. Who's arguing?
Should we talk about forgive me.
Oh, is it Mr. Ramos who's going to make the argument?
Mr. Ramos, should we talk about forgive me.
Sorry, trying to get the captions to show up. Mr. Ramos, welcome.
A motion to suppress electronic data. Great. So I looked at the cases you cited and the cases they cite, and I acknowledge that there seems to be growing suspicion about broad warrants to seize and search all of the layers of electronic data, maybe better stated surveillance, that our personal mobile devices are collecting about our movements and activities. But all of those cases then turn the corner to say, in these broad categories of cases, these broad searches are entirely appropriate. CSAM, drug distribution, chief among them.
Doesn't sound good for the defense.
This seems analogous to the drug distribution cases, where we have a broad investigation into a multi-element, complicated crime, aggravated.
Actually, you know what? This judge kind of reminds me of Judge Kranick, because I feel like Judge Kranick, when he talks to, when he just talks in general, it feels like he is a professor. And, you know, we found that Judge Kranick had students that I guess like, he had like law students that he was teaching, and then they came in to kind of shadow during the Sarah Boone case. I wonder I wonder if he teaches. Because I feel like the way that he talks to people, it seems very, it seems like if you're like a student, it'd be very easy to digest what he's saying. And he's very clear. He kind of goes through like the step-by-step process. I don't know. I wonder if he's like a professor, maybe. Or maybe like during his like off time, he like does some like teaches or like does some courses or anything like that.
Murder involving pecuniary gain and administration of poison. Why isn't this case like the drug distribution cases in which broad warrants for comprehensive downloads of mobile devices are found appropriate?
I think it's very, very clear that when you have a drug distribution case, that phone is their mobile assistant to get everything done.
But this case involves an element of that.
It involves an element, but she was not being investigated for these drug distribution.
I had to look at what CSAM was. No, there was no indication of CP or anything on her phone. Not that I've heard of. Has anyone seen a SWAT raid IRL? It's crazy to see. Did something happen recently? I've seen like videos on YouTube, but they've been cracking down hard on like those like swatters and stuff like that. And there was this one guy recently that got he was sentenced recently for all the swatting that he did for in the past without the streamers. And he got like big trouble.
Distribution cases, and when we're talking drug distribution, we're not talking, Judge,
Yeah, just call it CP
about
Northwest.
cases where I'm at a party and I call somebody, hey, go grab me some dope, and they come over. These drug
A
distribution.
lot of times in the Salt Lake Valley, that's exactly what they're serving warrants about.
I would disagree. I would say that the distribution that they're investigating at that point, when they get to that individual, they have already gone through multiple layers to identify that that one individual who is distributing a bunch of drugs has come up on the radar multiple times. They have a wire, or they have poll cams, or they're following them. It's a full-on assault on, hey, we know you have two phones. We know you're using both of them. We know that when you turn off one of them, you're turning on another and you're calling the same individuals. There is a method to that madness. Here, yeah, they found out, or they believe they find information that she was communicating with one individual about fentanyl. They are very capable, and they do so in their affidavits. They indicate their concerns and who it is. So they have a phone number, they have a time frame, and they know what they're searching for in terms of what type of drugs. To say that because that happened, or because they have that information, that they could then go into Ms. Richins' entire phone, that's a huge step, Judge. What's more concerning to me, Your Honor, is that, go ahead.
Well, that's not the only thing they're investigating, right?
No, and I'm just, to be clear, I'm just responding to Your Honor's question.
So I understand your response there, but in addition to securing fentanyl, they're investigating the pecuniary gain piece. They're also comparing the statements that Ms. Richins made at the scene on the evening of Eric's death to activity that occurred on the phone around the same time. That includes accelerometer data, searches, location, activity on the phone, whether it was being manipulated. These are all fitting into those 11 buckets of information that are in each of the warrants.
This is where I'm concerned with this, Judge. To say that they're searching for something and then say we get to search everywhere, they don't go hand in hand. What I mean by that is if they're saying that they're searching to cross-reference what she said that night, they have the full capability of only searching for that. Rule 40 provides that when the search warrant is returned, that they must list exactly what they did, what they obtained, specific to that warrant. They didn't do that here, and they could have. They could have.
Forgive me, I didn't see the...
It just indicates one extraction.
Okay, right.
There's no detail. There's no way to tell the signing judge, hey, Judge, I know we told you we were looking for this, and that we were going to look for it in these 11 buckets.
Right.
Hey, Judge, here's a printout of everything that we did to make sure that we don't go beyond that.
Don't these 11 buckets, though, describe the entirety of the data available on iPhone Pro, for example?
That's kind of the problem.
Okay.
Right? And this isn't what's... So I go back to Leon, where it gives us the exceptions, right? And, oh, well, you know what? If it's good faith. Even in Leon, though, Judge. Specifically, I think it was Judge, in the concurrence, Judge Blackman indicated, and I'll quote here, page 928 of Leon, if it should emerge from experience that, contrary to our expectations, the good faith exception to the exclusionary rule results in a material change in police compliance with the Fourth Amendment, we shall have to reconsider what we have undertaken here. The logic of a decision that rests on untested predictions about police conduct demands no less. If a single principle may be drawn from this court's exclusionary rule decisions from Weeks through Mapp to the decisions handed down today, it is that the scope of the exclusionary rule is subject to change in light of changing judicial understanding about the effects of the rule outside of the confines of the courtroom. It is incumbent on the nation's law enforcement officers, who must continue to observe the Fourth Amendment in the wake of today's decision, to recognize the double-edged nature of that principle. Judge, this was written in '85. We're in a wholly different world. Wholly
true.
different. And what's most concerning,
Yeah, if I remember correctly, basically all the phone information that they're getting from Kouri Richins, the reason why they want it is because Kouri Richins said the night of Eric Richins passing, she said that she left her phone by her bedside. She went into her child's room because they were having a nightmare, and she was with the child the entire time. And then all of a sudden she went back to the room, and then she noticed that Eric was unresponsive. Now, I think police was trying to debunk her story, because when they did eventually get their hands on her phone, they saw that she was like taking steps back and forth, that she was actually active, and that she had waited maybe possibly 10 minutes or something before calling 911. I'm not quite sure. But we had a lot of information from the phone.
is that when the affidavit is being written, they specify what they're looking for, and they know they have the ability to limit their search into a phone to that. It is possible.
Hold on. They know the crime they're investigating. They know the potential elements of that crime. They have identified among the sources of evidence of whether that crime has occurred a mobile device belonging to the defendant that, based upon sworn statements in the probable cause, records.
Oh, yeah, I think she was texting around that time and then maybe browsing the internet, if I remember correctly.
At least 11 categories of potentially relevant information. They don't know what the information actually is, but they provide probable cause for why those 11 categories are likely to be, or support a reasonable belief that they would be, in the parlance of probable cause,
Hi, Shaniqua.
show whether the crime was committed.
I'll take issue with that, and this is why.
Can't believe I didn't see the live notification. Oh, no. If you join the Discord, you can also have the Discord notification go out as well. Text a housekeeper for better pills.
To put up 11 broad categories and say, we know they exist and we know they're there. We don't know what's inside, but we know what we're looking for. That's a broad stroke, because they know that within each of those boxes, those 11 categories, there's more. And they know that they can parse out even more. As an example, if they're looking for GPS locations, there's no reason why they need to go through the entire history of that phone from the moment it was turned on until shortly before the first time they believe that Ms. Richins met.
So I acknowledge this argument. I looked at it hard. It seems that Fuller and Hoffman lean, at least in part, on the inherent limitation of the criminal conduct being investigated as the limiting principle for what you just described.
Correct.
Where you're investigating aggravated murder, you are not entitled to be searching for, within the phone, evidence of, I'm trying to come up with something completely different, failure to keep a dog restrained under county code. So there seems to be, in the cases, Fuller and Hoffman included, a recognition that the criminal conduct listed in the application for the search warrant, including the probable cause statement, acts as an inherent limitation on the scope of the warrant. Would you disagree?
Oh, here's
No,
the
I
Discord
agree.
link.
Okay.
The problem is,
When is the trial? Next month in April, end of April. So they're going to do jury selection end of April, and then they'll start either, I think, beginning of May. So it's coming up real close. It'll be right. Actually, it's probably going to collide with the Karen Reed trial. No.
is that any crime within digital media can give you access to the entire phone if we go down that road. The reason that these cases are very unique is because we know that those crimes with CSAM, they required the phone to create these images, to distribute the images, to store the images.
Well, maybe. there's a
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Northwest. I just got a notification on Twitter. It's a recap thing. It says, Lori Daybell claims Jesus will exonerate her. Fuck Lori.
potential, for example, if someone has CSAM on their laptop, there is a reasonable belief, given what we know about these cases, there may be related evidence on the mobile device.
Fair. I would agree with that. Yeah. But for example, taking your, if for some reason a judicial, there was a warrant signed by a judge saying you can go into the phone to search for whether or not this individual kept a leash on the dog.
No, I agree. So
Right.
there, the elements of that crime are so specific and so narrow
Right.
that I don't understand why we'd be searching a phone there. There, I think you have a much stronger argument. Like, what are you really asking for? You're really asking just to find out if they were in a specific location at a specific time. But aggravated murder is far more multi-layered and multifaceted.
Yes and no, because you're limited temporally.
True?
If you're trying, in one of the affidavits, they indicate, I want to know how, specifically, it was, I want to, this is O'Driscoll. Due to the contradiction of facts between the medical examiner's findings and statements made by Kouri the night of her husband's death, and due to the deleted messages,
Right?
night of the death, and statements, I'm seeking to find out how Eric ingested the fentanyl. So starting there. So perhaps a message between someone, specifically the CB.
Forgive me, which warrant specifically?
Oh, I apologize. It is warrant ending 151.
So that's Exhibit 9, right?
I believe so. The white Apple iPhone 13. And it's page 3.
I think she had both of her phones seized. She had her phone that they seized from her, and then she got a second phone. And I think that second phone is the one that revealed some of her search history searches, where she was trying to figure out when she can get the payout after Eric Richins died. I think from like life insurance policies. Trying to figure out if there's like prisons for rich people. Very interesting stuff.
Okay.
So I'm seeking to find out how Eric ingested the fentanyl, how it was obtained, and by whom, from whom it was obtained, and who facilitated being obtained. Very specific what they're looking for within those 11 categories.
Right.
Right? Yet they did not do that.
Well, they imaged the phone and then
Correct.
searched for the data, right?
But they did nothing to prevent them from, or prevent going into areas, limiting areas they know they could not obtain that information.
But forgive me, I want to understand your position. Which of those 11 categories would you say cannot contain information related to that last paragraph? And mind you, this is all occurring, or all being considered in the context of, quote, affiant believes the property and evidence described above is evidence of the crime or crimes of aggravated murder.
Right. Personal and business schedules.
So if on his calendar, his iCal, he had a meeting with CL to pick up stuff, I imagine, first of all, you all would want to know that. And so would the state as potentially exculpatory evidence.
So personal and business schedules. To tell me how he ingested it on his business schedule.
Yeah, but respond to the example I just gave you. That's relevant information. It is information regarding what a person was doing or where they were going on a specific day and time.
Let me answer this. So your question, to make sure I get it clear, because I think I confused two of them. You want to know, you're saying that I would consider it relevant where he was if he met with CB on a certain date.
I think it's CL, but nonetheless.
Sorry, I thought you
Yeah.
said CB. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're asking if I think that's relevant.
Well, I think an investigating officer certainly would. It's potentially
Yeah.
exculpatory information if Eric is meeting with that person on a certain day and time.
So, for example, going there, it indicates I'm seeking to find out how Eric, I don't believe the schedule would indicate how,
From whom?
it was, how it was obtained, by whom, from whom it was obtained. When I look at the by whom, from whom it was obtained, I go back to the immediate paragraph, which indicates that they knew at that point that it was CB or CL that had provided the fentanyl, the alleged fentanyl. So when you look at a business schedule or a personal schedule, if I'm looking at my entire phone, then you would think that you would be able to just search, did I meet with CL? You could limit the search to that.
I understand your position, but I don't see anywhere in the case law where law enforcement is required to proceed in baby steps like that, rather than being able to proceed under probable cause to secure and search sources of information that are likely to have evidence of the crime described in the affidavit for search warrant. And part of that process necessarily requires comparing one body of information to another body of information to see where there are consistencies, connections, or inconsistencies, to draw a map of the whole universe of evidence over time. And here, given the limitation regarding investigation of aggravated murder, given the potential for relevant, either inculpatory or exculpatory information being found in each of those 11 categories of information described, and I believe it's the same 11 for all 4 warrants, correct?
It is. They did not change. Correct.
And given the discussion in Fuller and Hoffman, I just don't see, one, that these are insufficiently particular or overbroad on their face, and certainly not that the executing law enforcement officers should have realized that they were.
So it's a no.
Candidly, I think the real problem is the law simply hasn't caught up to the fact that devices are surveilling us 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think I guess my biggest issue with this is that we know, judges know, hopefully, that when they review this and they're being asked permission to go into, after the 10, number 11, all other digital activity. What in that phone is not digital activity?
Right.
It makes no sense.
I agree with you. When the judges are signing these, their expectation is that the phone will be forensically downloaded in its entirety.
And if that's the case, that is a big problem.
I think it would be a big problem for investigation of a unrestrained pet. I'm not sure it's a big problem in an investigation of aggravated murder that includes elements of pecuniary gain and administration of poison.
And I fully understand that. I think that the issue that I have, going back to the all other digital activity, is we have this vast amount of this technological advancement. And what we are doing right now is using that to our advantage when we deem fit. So we know that we can extract the entire, as Your Honor said, mirror the entire image. Yet our courts know and we know that they do not need to do that. That they can, when they're going into that phone, limit their search. It might be very narrow. It could be broader. The point here is that the affiant is saying, I need these specific things. I know when things happen. I know that I can limit myself in going into this phone, that there are privacy concerns. But then a signing judge says, nah, it's okay. Just go into the whole phone. That warrant was signed in 2 minutes after it was issued to the judge.
Now, in fairness, it's not the first time I think that judge had seen that probable cause statement. Let's be careful here, right? Given the dates,
Well, we have the first one that is ending.
you have to understand the judges are on signing duty for days at a time. And so when you've seen the probable cause statement on Monday, you know what it says, except for the last paragraph when they add stuff on the 4th day. So if it takes you 30 minutes the first time, it doesn't take you 30 minutes the second time.
Okay,
I just don't want there to be many misunderstandings that people are fast forwarding to the end and approving the warrant.
well, I want to make sure we had a couple of different judges, but
Truth.
point.
Yeah.
I'll end it with this. Regardless if it was 2 minutes or not, the judges have the ability to limit the scope. They know they can limit the scope. The affiant is requesting that scope that for a very limited scope. No changes are made whatsoever. That is the main concern. Is we know that we are asking for something very specific, Judge, yet we want to go into everything, and there is nothing done by the signing judges to limit that scope.
I think you've preserved that argument. Pause for just a second.
Sure.
The relief requested is an order suppressing, quote, all evidence obtained from the search of defendant's cell phone and Apple user IDs pursuant to search warrants. Is there and if your answer today is not prejudicial to you thinking about it and coming back, but
Sure.
Is there a specific piece that you would say they have seized or offered as potential evidence of something in this case that is outside the scope of an investigation of aggravated murder? Because that limitation has to mean something.
I mean, the majority of what's been provided, because again, we have a mirror image.
Right.
So I think the things that they're going to use, that the state is going to use in their prosecution related to this is very, very minor.
Okay.
Yet, they've used information to gain insight into Ms. Richins' life.
Well, part of that was necessary given the financial before and after or financial status quo considerations.
Sure. I would note that and I know Your Honor has indicated it, I think, twice or 3 times now, the financial aspect. I want to be clear. So is Your Honor referring to the motive?
Well, one is, I think,
Or
the
what the
statute, one of the
statute
aggravating factors would
Okay.
be for pecuniary gain.
Got it. And the only
I
thing,
think 2 are alleged here. in the information for pecuniary gain and by administration of poison.
Correct.
Yeah.
So for pecuniary gain, I don't believe in any of the affidavits that I saw. Because I would agree under, I believe it was Norris, the court indicated that if the crime permeated, that is much more difficult for the defense in this argument when it comes down to the financial portion of it.
Right.
The affidavits I've seen, the only time that something like that's referenced is in regards to her changing an individual in the life insurance.
Right.
Which was in the same affidavit indicating that that was then confirmed not to have happened. I do want to make that very specific, carve that out. I believe that the financial side of things would possibly get us to Norris, and we would be in a very difficult position as it relates to aggravated murder. Understanding the gravity of the crime, I don't believe that the information or the evidence that they were seeking allow them to go beyond a very limited, very specific portion of the phone. And by that I mean time. It could be the day leading up to the murder, the alleged murder, after, in terms of covering up, because they mentioned that in the affidavit.
Right.
And then broader, the February 14th, procuring the alleged fentanyl.
So taking out the facts of this case, though,
Yeah.
like, mention a hypothetical
Sure.
aggravated murder case. The same probable cause statements, the same forensic download of the entire phone, and during a keyword search for certain things, they find a string of communications between defendant and a co-conspirator, dating back a year, and they find location information and some calendar entries that corroborate that these two people were meeting and communicating. Now, this is stuff they did not know when investigating, when submitting the motion,
The original
warrant.
Sure.
But it is evidence relevant to the crime of aggravated murder, in my
Right.
hypothetical.
Right.
That wouldn't be a problem, correct?
I don't think so because you, as you indicated, they would have searched. They would have searched for a specific term.
Right. Now, is there any indication, I mean, this is a lot of data, we're going to hear from their expert at trial, but I imagine some similar process went through. Nobody paged through all the data. I don't see any indication of that.
I don't believe the issue is whether or not they paged through it. Is that when they went to copy this whole thing,
Right.
Is page through like looking through the entire thing? Is that what they mean by it? Like going through page by page?
they copied all pages instead of just one,
Okay.
or limited to search terms, which they could have done.
Well, in my hypothetical, they do what they did here
Correct.
and do the search on
Correct.
the back end. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
I
So, for
understand,
example,
yeah.
in this, taking your hypothetical here, if they were to search for deleted data, there is a very simple checkbox that you said, "Hey, all deleted data, spit me out a report." We'd have no problem with that
Okay.
because that's what they were asking for. And it's very easy for them to know if data has been deleted and whether it can be recovered.
Okay. I understand your position.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Blair just a question.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, Mr.
Mr. Blair,
States.
I'm inclined to deny defendant's motion to suppress electronic data, docket 745, as briefed and are the circumstances as I understand them today. However, I acknowledge that in the abstract, it's possible that the investigating authorities' journey through the forensic downloads of the phones exceeds the scope of a reasonable investigation of aggravated murder. Would you acknowledge that if that evidence were to come to light, Mr. Ramos would be within his right to come back with a more specific motion to say, wait a minute, they had no basis to search for that stuff? For CSAM, for example.
Your Honor, I guess Mr. Ramos and the defense could come back. There's also,
I mean, this would all be limited by relevance.
right, I think
Yeah.
all the four numbers are going to kind of restrict what evidence the state presents, and they'll filter out any evidence that was kind of beyond the scope of the aggravated murder limitation
Okay.
to the warrants. I think that's how we'd address it, but I mean, I guess defense come back with whatever they want. Yeah, I don't want to say too much because the court said they were inclined to
No, I
deny.
understand. I guess
like,
what I'm
oh,
trying to
we're
tease
gonna
out
deny,
is
deny.
the limitation that flows from the crime being investigated, as discussed in Fuller and Hoffman. It has to mean something.
Yes, Your Honor, I agree. It does mean something.
Okay.
And I think, I guess to the court's point, that its meaning grounds in how investigators either search the material or maybe the better point is how the state uses the material.
Understood.
And I think the court will find going forward, defense will find, the whole world will find that the state is only using material that passes all the four-number hurdles for admission into evidence in a trial on aggravated murder.
Did I not read the defense's motion to suppress the electronic data? Because I feel like I'm not as familiar with this argument. That's why I was like a little confused and quiet here. Did I skip it? Maybe I did.
Okay, I understand the state's position.
Oh, that's it? I hate it when it ends like that. Okay. All right. Well, where's Kouri Richins? I'll have her on the screen. Is she even in there? Oh, there she is. Okay. Kouri Richins. Hello. Okay. So Kouri Richins, let me think. What are the documents that I have for Kouri Richins? Should I cover it today or a different day? This is probably a total of, it's not that bad actually. It's like 50 pages. It's not bad. But oh my God, are they very interesting? This is a list of all the financial crime stuff that the state is planning to present in the trial. And then this was arguing about the walk the dog letter. They're still arguing about that. But oh my gosh. In here though, the state gives a chronology of timeline leading up to the walk the dog letter and why the walk the dog letter should not be suppressed. And it's kind of wild because Kouri Richins and her mom, they reveal so much in these jailhouse phone calls. Jeez. I don't think we have the transcript of the phone calls, but that would be nice. But we do have like little excerpts from it. Oh my gosh. Wild. All right. So before we jump to the documents, I think I will read them. Should I read the documents today? I got to put my glasses though. Let's do a recap of the hearing so far. So the hearing happened last week. This was a hearing for a motion to suppress. We had motion to suppress the phone that was seized. There were oral statements that was made while she was detained, while they were searching her home. There were also oral statements that she made the day afterwards when Sergeant O'Driscoll came by to introduce himself and he was invited into her home. At some point, Kouri Richins' mom mentioned attorney and was like, oh, no, you need an attorney to be present. There were handwritten statements. These were from the orange notebook that was seized about a month after the oral statements. And initially, like I mentioned, Kouri Richins tried to say that the notebook was physician-patient privilege, which sounds like bullshit. It seems like I think the orange notebook was a diary of the days leading up to the murder and maybe even afterwards. Because I do remember a diary being referenced a few times when we were listening to the Kouri Richins hearing. But I tried to skim through my notes really quick and I couldn't find it. But I know they're here somewhere. There was a diary mentioned. I was like, oh my fucking God, she did not write a fucking diary. She did not document some stuff that would be used against her. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyways, the state was trying to, or actually no, I guess we'll just do the recap because I was going to go through more. Now, we'll just do the recap because the recap pretty much covers everything. All right, so we started with the defense. Suppress evidence from the phone. They were trying to argue that the phone was not taken from Kouri's person. However, the state is saying that it was taken from her person. So again, what happened was the law enforcement had a search warrant to search Kouri Richins' home. They pulled up and they noticed that she was leaving the property. She was driving off. So one of the officers went and basically signaled her lights and asked her to step out of the car and basically, let's go back to the house. You're under custody at this point. Now, the officer said that they saw Kouri Richins' phone in the cup holder, that it was within her reach. So technically, they could have taken her phone at that time. However, they didn't. The defense is trying to say that, well, that's a huge issue right there because technically the phone was in the car. It's not part of the property of the home. The police didn't have a right to seize the phone at that time. But that's where the state and the defense, that's where they're going to have a difference in opinion. And so at some point, Kouri Richins was brought back to the house. And I think 20 minutes in, they told her, go get your phone from the car. She goes gets the phone. She brings it back. And initially when I was reading Kouri Richins' motion, they made it seem like law enforcement was like, hey, go get your phone. She brings it back. Okay, give me your passcode. And then she gave them the passcode because she had no other choice but to give her the passcode because she would be told that, she wouldn't be free otherwise. That was the impression that I got in my head. But then we got more context from the state essentially saying that, well, the passcode was only asked because Kouri Richins wanted to, when they took Kouri Richins' phone, she was like, oh, I need some contacts in there. And they're like, okay, well, what's your passcode? And she gave them the passcode. Interesting. Anyways, the defense was trying to say that the phone was not contraband. They didn't have a right to take the phone away from her. However, the judge is saying, well, he does believe that the phone is contraband. All right. Next one is suppressing statements that was made at the home. So this is where the defense is trying to say that her Fifth and Sixth Amendment were violated. Fifth Amendment was, what is it again? The incriminating statement one. So you have a right to not make any incriminating statements against yourself. And the Sixth Amendment was you have a right to representation. So at that point, I think the judge was saying that Sixth Amendment, the right for representation, was not attached because technically she was not in custody at that point. And then Fifth Amendment, the making incriminating statements. What did the judge say? Why did I have not notes about that? I think maybe similar. Maybe they were saying that like, oh, she wasn't in custody at that point. No, it was something else. Sorry, I don't remember. I don't know why I don't have notes about this. Okay, now let's go to the Orange Notebook. Defense, suppressing written statements in the Orange Notebook. Person who had access to the house would not rearrange. Oh, okay. So the state was basically making an argument that this was in the motion or the reply to the defense's motion. But the state was saying that like, yeah, initially when they did have a search warrant and they came across this Orange Notebook, they didn't have a right to open it and read the contents of it. However, the state was trying to say that, well, that home would have been preserved anyways because they interviewed someone who had access to the home and that person wouldn't have removed any items in the house anyway. So when they would come back later on with other subsequent search warrants, they would have came across the Orange Notebook at some point. And the defense was trying to say, well, why would they really come across an Orange Notebook? It's an Orange Notebook. It's a child's Orange Notebook. And the judge was saying, well, actually, because she's being charged with financial fraud, it would make sense to go through like the paper trail documents, right? People writing things in notebooks or like maybe like having documents laying around and stuff like that. So at some point, it seems like the notebook probably would have been discovered later on. And of course, the defense, they disagree with that. State's response. This is about the blurts. So apparently Kouri Richins maybe made some blurts when she was with law enforcement. I think the judge was asking the state, well, wouldn't a reasonable person believe that they were not free to go at that time? The state says that doesn't matter. The judge says, well, it does matter in the custodial part of a custodial interrogation. However, I think, let's see, I think the judge, there's some back and forth. Oh, the state clarifies that the blurts that were being made by Kouri Richins, it was essentially the Detective Woody, saying, well, the medical examiner got a toxicology report and it found that there was fentanyl in Eric Richins' blood. And then Kouri Richins blurts out, fentanyl? What's that? Cut crack. And it's interesting for her to pretend to not know what fentanyl is because, now we have cell phone records of her obtaining fentanyl from her housekeeper, not once, but I think like twice, maybe even 3 times. Okay, automobile exception. The phone in arm's reach could have seized it pursuant to the warrant, which I already covered it. Again, they clarified how they were able to get to the passcode from Kouri Richins' phone is because she wanted the contacts out of the phone. Same thing with the Orange Notebook. We went over that earlier, how they said the same detective would have discovered it at some point anyways in the future search warrants. Okay, so this one was a little bit hard for me to follow because I guess I didn't read the motion for this one. I might have missed it. So this is when the defense, Mr. Ramos, was arguing the motion to suppress the electronic data. I think the defense was trying to say that it was too broad, the search warrant. The judge, however, said there was no case law where law enforcement is required to proceed in baby steps, so working tiny little steps, rather than being able to proceed in a probable cause to secure/search sources of information that are likely to have evidence of crime described in the affidavit. So the defense was arguing that it felt like it was too broad because there's no time frame restrictions, maybe. But the judge did say that they didn't see it as insufficiently particular over broad. The real problem is that the law had not caught up, which is essentially when the law was written, back then we didn't have the technology that we had now, which is with cell phones, right? So they're slowly catching up. But I mean, imagine how much information you can get off of your cell phone. With Koberger's case, how much information can you get from your Amazon account, right? Your purchases, now there's Amazon Pharmacy, your medication, and then there's the Alexa app, or is it Alexa? Alexa's Amazon, right? Yeah. So Amazon is they can have a lot of information on you. So that was a problem in the Koberger case. For the judge, he said he's not sure if it's a big problem in an investigation of aggravated murder that includes elements of monetary gain and the administration of poison, which is what she's being accused of. And the defense was saying that, well, you know, they could, if they wanted to make it not so broad, they can look at the day leading up to the murder, maybe the day afterwards for cover up, and then February 14 when she would have procured the fentanyl. But after the defense argued, the judge did say to the state that he's already inclined to deny the defense's motion anyways for the electronic data motion. But I got to go back and read it because I guess I missed it. You're taking out the trash? Oh, I know. The trash be showing up everywhere, dude. What's up, Bleep? It was trash day for me, too. I feel like it's so nice when you like take the trash out, you know, and then like the bins come back empty. It's like, oh, yes, amazing. Okay, so I think we will read the Kouri Richins document. Why not? I'm going to take one of my glasses, though. Let's read two of the documents. One is basically a recap of what the state plans to essentially introduce as evidence. It's essentially a timeline of Kouri Richins and all the financial frauds that she was getting into. And we went over some of it, but man, just going over it again, I just forget how crazy it is. Like, you know, Kouri Richins essentially she owed a lot of money, a lot of fucking money, especially money to, what are they called again? Are they called loan sharks? Basically people that you borrow from, short-term loans, but they have like very high interest. And so, you know, most people do that because they want to get like a good chunk of money. You don't want to borrow money the conventional way, right? And what she's trying to do, she's trying to flip houses. So she needs a bunch of money, buy these houses, she flips them, and then she sells them for a profit on the market. However, the business that she was doing was not profitable at all. Like I guess she wasn't very good at it. I don't know. She had like issues. She would take money that was supposed to go for her husband's tax payments, and she would pretend to pay off the tax payments, but then she would use them instead and then funnel it into her business account, allegedly. And then, you know, she would owe people money and then she would keep cycling money. And like, it was crazy. So I'm going to read through this, through all the financial stuff that she was doing. And then afterwards, we'll go to the chronological stuff with the walk the dog letter because it's wild. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Like Kouri Richins and her mom, they are crazy. Okay, I don't know. I don't know. These phone calls, man, it makes them look really crazy. But all right, guys, let's jump on over to window capture. I think it's this one, right? Yes. Okay, I got it. I gotta put my glasses on. This is not my favorite glasses right now. You don't understand. You don't know why she was oversetting on her business. Her family had a comfortable life. I think she wanted to make her own money. You know, Eric was a very successful man. She probably wanted to be a successful, known person as well. She didn't want to admit that her business was failing. She probably thought at some point, you know, she could borrow enough money to pay off all her own debts and then maybe profit with the new houses, but then the profit of the new houses never really came through. You know, it's what happens. A lot of people just get caught up in the game and at some point they can't get out of it. And I think she, you know, based on what's been reported with the text messages of her and her paramour, it seems like she wanted to get the fuck out of the marriage. And it's possible that Eric wouldn't give her a good chunk of the money. Yeah, I saw that they were opening the investigation into Kouri Richins' mom's partner, but I don't know if there's ever any if there's any conclusion to that or if that's like still ongoing. Hey Kendrick, how are you doing today? How's it going? Okay, so when was this filed? Do we have a date here? I think the date's at the bottom then. The state notices both evidence that it intends to offer in its case in chief and evidence that it may offer in rebuttal or impeachment. The state notices the latter because it can envision circumstances wherein the defense introduces evidence or argument that the defendant was a successful business person or engaged in normal business practices, or the defendant testifies and puts her credibility at issue. In these circumstances, it will be permissible for the state to introduce evidence of the defendant's numerous financial frauds, other crimes, wrongs, or acts. She reminds me of Murdoch. because Murdoch had like spider webs of all the shit that he was up to, you know, all the crazy things that he was doing. The state is mindful that the court's finding in connection with the defense's motion to sever that financial frauds predating January 2022 are inadmissible under Rule 404 because, in part, committing fraud demonstrates a propensity to commit murder. So that's why it's not allowed. The state believes that this ruling is erroneous as a matter of law and will move the court to reconsider at an appropriate time, but understands the status quo. The case in chief, 404B evidence. March 19, 2019, defendant obtains a $250,000 home equity line of credit, a HELOC, on Eric Richins' home without Eric Richins' knowledge or consent by using a durable power attorney. I think they did hire a handwriting signature analysis person to analyze Eric Richins' signature, how it normally is with what a forged signature could look like by Kouri Richins, allegedly. Before and after Eric Richins' death, the defendant engaged in an intimate relationship with Robert Joshua Grossman. You were asking earlier what the name of the paramour was. It's in this document. To include without limitation text messages regarding future plans as a couple and planning a vacation together for April 2022. In May 2021, the defendant consulted with a divorce attorney, Marie Bramwell, testimony of Barney and Bramwell. The defendants and Eric Richins' 2019 to 2021 unpaid federal income tax liability totaled over $300,000. Now, the state, they allege that this was not Eric Richins' fault. He had money he set aside, and he expected Kouri Richins to pay the federal tax liability, and she pretended she did, but she never did. And so instead, she took that money and then funneled it into her own accounts instead. In 2021, the defendant and KRR, so that's Kouri Richins Realty, that's her business, had $10,095.65 in unpaid property tax liabilities. From August 28, 2021 to December 28, 2021, the defendant's Navy Federal Credit Union checking account balance ranged between $0 and negative $51.41. During the same period, the defendant wrote 7 checks from this account totaling $36,600 payable to herself or KRR. Again, that's her company. The credit union returned all 7 checks unpaid. In the 5 months preceding Kouri Richins' death, the defendant sought to withdraw over $300K from Kouri Richins' America First Credit Union account for which there were insufficient funds. This resulted in, this is crazy to me, guys, 198 separate overdraft and return transaction fees totaling over $5,000. Oh my gosh, overdraft fees gives me the nightmares. Like that was me like in the teens and early 20s, the whole overdraft thing. Oh gosh. On December 9, 2021, Green Grass Holdings sued the defendant and her company and the defendant's aunt, Doreen Kouri, in the Supreme Court of New York. I don't know, this seems like a whole family affair thing with Kouri Richins and her immediate family being involved in some stuff. I don't know, maybe her aunt Doreen didn't know. Who knows? So, being sued for breach of contract and on their personal guarantees, the amount claimed was $87,532 plus interest costs and disbursements. On January 1st, 2022, the defendant accessed C&E Stone's Masonry, so that is again, that's her husband's company, online New York Life account and changed the beneficiary for Kouri Wright's life insurance policy, so that's Eric Richins' business partner, from Eric Richins to Kouri Richins and then back again. So New York Life Insurance, they got a notification for this. They reached out to, I think, Eric Richins and the business partner, and they immediately changed it back. On January 11, 2022, the defendant's best friend, so I wonder if the best friend is in on this too, wired Kouri Richins, her company, a total of $45,000 representing the down payment on the home that she was purchasing from the defendant. Or did she also scam the best friend? I don't know. That, honestly, Kouri Richins, I could totally see her maybe doing that with all the stuff that she's been alleged of doing, you know? The defendant did not apply $45,000 as a down payment or transfer title of the home to her best friend as agreed. So I think she might have fucked over the best friend. Instead, the defendant spent $45,000 to repay other high-interest short-term obligations. And this is how you get into the troubles. You borrow money from other people or you take money from other people, you misrepresent what the money's going to be used for, and then you use it to pay for your own shit that you have piling up. January 22nd, 2022, the defendant asked Hayden Jeffs whether he can procure propofol and fentanyl for her. Wait, Hayden Jeffs. Wait, is this, there was someone that said Kouri Richins had asked them to get drugs for them, but they already passed away recently because like car accident or something happened. Is that Hayden Jeffs? If it is, they're no longer, they're deceased now. The defendant deleted essentially all text messages and much of the other data from her cell phone from January 1st, 2022 to March 15, 2022. See defendant's toll record, the CDR of Carmen Lauber. I think that's the apparent drug dealer, or the person who was like the middleman between the drug dealer and Kouri Richins. March 6, 2022, learned that the Eric Richins Living Trust owned the home at 282 Willow Court in Francis. So this is the house that she was living in with her deceased husband at that time. And that Katie Richins Benson was trustee. Katie Richins Benson was in control of the Eric Richins estate. That's his sister. The defendant's reaction was so overwhelming, she punched Amy Richins, had an emotional meltdown in front of her best friend, collapsing on the garage floor and screaming. I wonder if there's a ring camera. On or about September 12, 2023, the defendant wrote the walk the dog letter to tamper with witness testimony, manipulate publicity, and retaliate against Eric Richins' family. The defendant demonstrated her intent in writing the letter in a series of jail calls with family members, and January 23, 2025, evidentiary hearing and exhibits cited therein. Oh man, crazy. All right, rebuttal, impeachment, and reconsideration 404B evidence. March 19, defendant obtained a HELOC on Eric Richins' home without Eric Richins' knowledge or consent by altering a durable power of attorney. July 7, 2021, defendant on behalf of her business entered into a mortgage loan with Iron Bridge Financial. Oh gosh, this is so funny. In support of the loan application, the defendant knowingly submitted a forged bank account statement, so from her business, to Iron Bridge. The statement falsely represented C&E's account balance as KRR's account balance. So because she was applying for a loan, she doesn't have the fucking money. So you know what she does? She takes the bank statement from her husband's, allegedly, and then she basically just changed the letterhead or maybe just like the body of it, and then she switched it out to make it look like it's her business that has this account balance, not her husband's. However, when an Iron Bridge analyst questioned the disparity between KR's relatively high account balance and the defendant's relatively low credit score, the defendant falsely replied, "Everything is paid off now. It just probably hasn't updated. I recently learned about all of this as well. LOL. And then my husband decided to explain to me this was his doing a while ago." Yeah, blame the husband. "We are in the process of separation for one of the many reasons, but his is one of them is to keep it short and sweet. LOL. Now, if you guys remember reading the Kouri Richins emails when she was emailing the detective, LOL, and the way with the emojis and all that stuff, like, oh my gosh, so cringe. There's nothing wrong with LOLs and emojis, but like the context that she was using it in, whew. August 4, 2021, the defendant on behalf of her business entered into a mortgage loan with Boomerang Finance. In support of the loan application, the defendant knowingly submitted a forged KRR bank statement. Again, the statement falsely represented her husband's account balance as if it was her own balance. On August 12, 2021, the defendant knowingly submitted a forged personal bank statement in support of a loan application to Excel Financial Services. The statement falsely represented, again, her husband's business bank account as her own. Surprised by the defendant's unexpectedly low credit rating, Excel's principal asked her to provide a letter of explanation. On September 12, 2021, the defendant explained that she had her identity stolen by a lady out of Seattle that had gotten a hold of her social security number. Jeez. Is there a way that like banks can further fact check this shit? Because people can just make shit up anytime. October 13, 2021, defendant knowingly submitted a forged personal bank statement in support of a loan application to Excel. The statement falsely again represented her husband's business bank account as her own. The defendant also knowingly submitted a forged organizational document that falsely represented that Dorian Kouri owned 25% of KRR. That's her aunt. November 23rd, 2021, the defendant knowingly submitted a forged KRR bank account in support of a loan application. And again, it falsely represents her account balance as it did the October 2021 account balance, right? Oh, sorry. It falsely represented her account balance, August 2021 balance, as its October 2021 account balance. So maybe she was really good at Photoshop, or she had someone who Photoshop her shit for her. Man, Kouri Richins must have been one of the kids who Photoshopped their report cards. Do you guys know any kids that used to do that? Dude, I remember there were kids that used to get the whiteout, and they would white out the, the bad grade and then put like a different grade on top of it. I don't know if that ever worked though, because it didn't look very convincing. Defendant also knowingly submitted a forged organization. But no, sorry. They would put it through the copy, what's it called? The copy machine? Yeah, the copy machine. Oh my God, kids are so smart. The defendant also knowingly submitted a forged organizational document that falsely represented that Doreen Kouri owned 81% of KRR. March 17, 2023, the defendant fraudulently transferred her mother's home to KRR by convincing her mother to sign papers that would supposedly add the defendant's name to her mother's deed. Instead, the papers transferred titles of the home to KRR. I wonder if she also scammed her mom as well. The defendant then encumbered her mother's home with another $135,000 loan. To obtain this loan, the defendant falsely told the lender that she was going to rehab her mother's new home and that she was doing fix and flips for about 5 years now. I have done nearly 40 flips. C&E, again, her husband's business company, distributed over $220,000 to Kouri Richins, representing estimated quarterly taxes due. The defendant falsely informed her and Kouri Richins' accountant that she remitted that money to the IRS when in fact she used that money for other purposes. Jesus. 2021, the defendant falsely advertised to certain prospective investors that she acquired $14 million in real estate in 5 years, profited $1 million in 5 projects, and employed 147 people based out of Park City. It's like, how do you get into investments with people? Jesus, people can just like lie about everything. It's crazy. February 10, 2022, defendant falsely advertised to certain prospective investors that she was contributing to a funding purchase of the Midway Mansion. The defendant did not contribute to the funding the purchase of the Midway Mansion and instead received $81,386 cash back at closing. March 9, defendant purchased Fountainall from Carmen Lauber. And that's it. Okay, so this is the juicy part. This walk the dog thing. And I haven't covered this before, but it talks about Kouri Richins' jailhouse calls that she made with her family. Now, we got a little bit of it, a tiny bit of it, jailhouse calls with her mom, jailhouse calls between her and her brother. However, the state lays out why this walk the dog letter should not be suppressed, because Kouri Richins initially, I think, said that, they unlawfully went through my stuff and they took something that's supposed to be attorney-client privilege. And then later on, I think 8 months later, they try to say, well, okay, it's actually attorney work product. So basically, if you have, if you're working on something and you have a process, you have the outlines, you got your notes and all that stuff, that wouldn't be able to be turned over because that's work product, right? And so now she's arguing, well, that's attorney work product stuff. However, her previous attorney, Sky Lazaro, initially when this walk the dog letter came up, she never said that it was a attorney work product because it would have been her work product. She would have recognized it as such. It wasn't until when she decided to withdraw, I think 8 months later, she's like, oh yeah, that's attorney work product. Bye, I'm withdrawing. See you later. And then now Kouri Richins' new defense attorneys, they have to argue it. But the state is saying, no, it's not. They're trying to say it's not attorney-client communication and then it's not attorney work product privilege. And it gets really interesting because we get into the timeline and I like getting to timelines. Now, I think, we got to read because, man, they do such a good job at running these motions sometimes. The state respectfully requests that the court deny the defendant's motion to suppress the letter. The walk the dog letter is exactly what appears to be a letter from the defendant to her mother, written to tamper with witness testimony, manipulate publicity to influence potential jurors, and retaliate against Kouri Richins' family. The defendant wrote the letter because she's scared for her life. The defendant has presented no evidence to meet her burden to demonstrate that the letter contains confidential communication or that she is prepared in anticipation of litigation or for trial. And the state's evidence overwhelmingly contradicts these notions. Accordingly, the walk the dog letter is not privilege, attorney-client privilege, or attorney work product privilege. Defense former counsel Sky Lazaro deployed the walk the dog letter to offensively litigate for 8 months without claiming any privilege. Ms. Lazaro didn't claim that the letter was privileged until the very day that she withdrew as counsel. She's like, peace out, I'm leaving. Ms. Lazaro was the one person in the world who could have immediately recognized the walk the dog letter as privilege if that is what it was. And for 8 months, she did not, because it would have been her work product. The fact that Ms. Lazaro did not claim privilege until she had exhausted the letter's offensive value and she would not have to demonstrate privilege tells the court everything it needs to know. To defend against the defendant's privilege claim, it is necessary to place the walk the dog letter in context and provide the court the information surrounding its creation and content. In the days leading up to the defendant writing the letter, she was exasperated that her family, friends, could not provide evidence to support her recently concocted theory that Kouri Richins used illicit drugs. Buoyed by her success with using publicity to influence public opinion, and fuming that Kouri Richins' family was prevailing in despite over guardianship of the defendants and Kouri Richins' 3 son. Now, I remember when we were covering Kouri Richins a couple months, or this is like a couple years back, I guess, or a couple months back. No, a couple years already. Oh my God, time flies. I do remember that there were stories coming out that Kouri Richins was a heavy drug user. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's true. Or, if it's a story that's been planted by maybe the defense. The state will present facts and context on paper as best as it can. However, one must listen to approximately 4 hours of the defendant's jail calls spanning from September 11 to 13, 2023 to fully understand the facts and the context. Upload it. I will listen to it. This is the unfortunate reality of understanding cryptic discussions between people seeking to conceal criminal and other nefarious conduct. It is readily apparent from the totality of the defendant's jail calls leading up to her writing the walk the dog letter that neither her brother, Ronald Darden, nor any of her friends possess any evidence that Kouri Richins used illicit drugs. Now, the interesting thing about this, apparently Kouri Richins was working with like a true crime podcaster. I don't know who that is. Not too sure, but maybe we've seen their work before. Maybe we've seen some of their stuff before, because I did hear about Kouri Richins using drugs, and it was one of the things that popped up, I think like a year or two ago. Statement of relevant facts. The walk the dog letter. In the walk the dog letter, the defendant wrote, Ms. Lazaro, that's the attorney, wants to link Kouri getting drugs and pills from Mexico. So we need some kind of connection. Here's what I'm thinking, but you have to talk to Ronnie, the brother. You would probably have to testify to this, but it's super short. Not a lot to it. Yeah, it's super easy. You got this. The defendant then set forth Ronald Darden's testimony. This is what she writes. Upon information and belief, just like they say, a year prior to Kouri's death, Ronnie was over watching football one Sunday, and Kouri and Ronnie were chatting about Kouri's Mexico trips. Kouri told Ronnie he gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico from the workers at the ranch. Not to tell me, because I would get mad, because I always said he just gets high every night and won't help take care of the kids. Kouri told Ronnie he keeps them in an allergy pill bottle in his work truck so I wouldn't find them. Ronnie never told me about the conversation. Kouri finally told me and asked if Carmen could get some. Oh, that's right. Oh, gosh. So she is saying that she got the drugs because her husband told her to. Okay. Kouri never wanted anyone to know he had an issue, especially get caught. He always wanted Kouri to go down for him. Dun dun. The defendant further instructed, reword this however Ronnie needs to make the point, just include it all. It can be short and to the point, but it has to be done. Upon information and belief, LOL. The defendant then explained, Miss Lazaro has to make the connection between Kouri and Mexico because that makes the most sense in her mind. If it's Ronnie's information and belief about the connection over football, Sky can use that as a connection. Tell Ronnie don't overanalyze it. It was a quick 2-minute conversation. LOL. Tell him I need him to do this. Bring me home, then we will get those damn bitches. Jesus, she sounds like a very sinister cartoon villain. Like, I don't know, I imagine her as like Megamind, just like plotting away in her little cell. The defendant's statements and jail calls. Beginning the night, Eric Richins' death and continuing through the defendant's May 8, 2023 arrest, the defendant made multiple statements to law enforcement, the Office of the Utah Medical Examiner, and the life insurance company that Eric Richins did not use illicit drugs, other than the occasional THC gummies. Man, this is how your words bite you in the ass later. She told them that he doesn't do drugs. What are you talking about? Maybe he does gummies once in a while. And now she's like, oh, actually, you know what? You're right. He did do illicit drugs and I had to get them for him. Man, stories be changing. Detectives have never yielded any information that Eric Richins used illicit drugs other than THC gummies. The guide at the hunting ranch in Mexico where Eric Richins hunted in January 2022 reported that he never knew Eric Richins to be a drug user, and that Eric Richins was not one of the guys to ask him where to get drugs on hunts in Mexico. The state produces information to the defense May 9, 2023. Now, we're in September 2023. People magazine published a cover story, Did She Kill Him?, featuring this case. The article traffics statements and photographs provided by the defendant's family and friends. On September 12, 2023, the defendant and her mother discussed how the People magazine turned people's heads. Some who read it now really believe the defendant is 100% innocent. I think I did read that article, actually. That rings a bell. That must have been the article that I read. The defendant's mother remarked, if Sky doesn't come through, at least we have the public and there's hope. Now, we're in September 2nd, 2023. A true crime writer and her researcher talked to the defendant's mother daily. The defendant's mother, in turn, provided daily updates to the defendant. They were digging up dirt on Eric Richins. The true crime writer declared that hunting season on Eric the Dead is now opened. Jesus. Damaging information about Eric Richins was going out in the mail to hit every network, and this is going to happen the week of September 11, 2023. On September 11, 2023, in a call placed at 6:52 p.m., the defendant and her mother discussed an upcoming event with television cameras where the defendant's two brothers would be interviewed together. Did this interview ever come to fruition? On September 11, 2023, in a call placed at 9:11 p.m. Jesus, coincidence much? September 11, call placed at 9:11. The defendant and her mother talked for 18 minutes about their long-standing grievances with the Richins family. We sat quiet for so fucking long is the problem, said the defendant's mother. The defendant and her mother discussed how Katie started this shit. Enough is enough. Now let's see how they respond to this. Anyone can dish it out. Let's see how long you take it. Let's air the laundry. The next day, on September 12, 2023, in a call placed at 11:02 a.m., the defendant's mother informed the defendant that her brother, Ronald Darden, talked to Ms. Lazaro's, that's the attorney, investigator, and told him, you're probably better off talking to my mom because she would know more. Oh no. Oh, the brother's not coming through. The defendant responded, why the hell would Ronnie do that? I told Ronnie I need him to talk to the investigator. During a call placed at 11:33 a.m., Ronald Darden confirmed, yeah, I wasn't much help. I wonder if the brother's like, doesn't want to help because he knows he might get in trouble, or maybe he's a dipshit. I don't know. During the same call, the defendant told her mother that the admirer the defendant put in charge for media plan is contacting every media outlet possible. The admirer? Is that the true crime writer, or is that her paramour, or is it someone else? Who's the admirer? At the end of this call, the defendant read a letter from another inmate aloud to her mother. This letter has previously been referred to the record as letter number 2. The defendant's mother asked, can you take a picture of it and send it to me? The defendant replied, no, we can't take pictures. Pause. I could do a video and hold it up and you can take a screenshot of it from the video. Oh no, this is how it starts. Because they saw this and they're like, wait a second, what is she doing over there? September 12, 2023, in a call placed at 3:19 p.m., the defendant's mother told her, my true crime writers had to stop what they're doing because we're all looking for the same information and nobody can seem to come up with it. The investigation only has leads. Hearsay, hearsay, hearsay. Well, everybody has got a fistful of hearsay. Do any of you have proof of anything? That's where we're at with the media. September 12, 2023, in a call placed at 4:16 p.m., the defendant's mother reported, spoke with both Kelsey and Chelsea, and I didn't get anywhere, so I'm kind of bummed. I thought they would have more answers for me, and they didn't. Defendant told her mother that the true crime writers are done because we needed that one thing and we don't have it. Oh, I wonder why you don't have it. Is it because it's not true? And so when they went to go air, they said they wouldn't do it without that one thing. And we don't have it. Your investigators don't have it, but we have to get it. It's night and day difference. And I don't know how. I don't know what avenue to take. The true crime writer wanted to put it out there and get it out nationwide. I can't do it because it's all hearsay. We need actual proof. Well, we don't have it. We don't. I don't have it. Ronnie don't have it. Nobody has it. Why are they putting this in the jailhouse calls? This is recorded. Why? Oh, maybe the brother has a backbone. And who knows, tomorrow morning I could wake up, somebody's got it. Okay. September 12, 2023, in a call placed at 4:43 p.m., the defendant and her mother talked about needing to find an actual physical person who was seen, sold, or joined. The defendant asked, and Ronnie hasn't? The defendant's mother replied, no, Ronnie didn't. And Ronnie told the investigators, no, I don't know any of that. That's just recent. I've learned of that. Oh no, she's pissed at her brother. I was sure Chelsea was going to say yes, but she didn't, and Kelsey didn't. At least the best friends. Same day, September 12, in a text message sent at 5:01 p.m., the defendant told the brother, think back. New Year's, murder mystery dinner, you and Eric, don't reply, just think. Oh my goodness. September 12, 2023, in a call placed at 5:17 p.m., the defendant's mother reported an argument she had with the defendant's brother, Dennis Kouri. I guess it's her uncle. Only Ronald Darden could retrieve the gun receipts because he had defendant's power of attorney. Ronnie needed to get the gun receipts before a juvenile court hearing on September 29. This is our only chance for the boys, and our other chances aren't looking good. So it seems like they were losing custody. It seems like Eric Richins, his sisters, were going to get custody of the boys and not the Kouri Richins side of the family. September 12, in a call placed at 6:37 p.m. Again, this is the same day. Defendant had similar discussions with Dennis Kouri about gun receipts and frustrations with brother Ronnie. Dennis Kouri said, let me tell you how important this is. If Katie gets your boys because Ronnie doesn't do this, this is Ronnie's fault. Dennis Kouri explained, if we pull this off, I get your kids immediately. Ronnie will press charges immediately. Katie will be arrested. There are 3 guns. Each one of those carries a 10-year mandatory sentence. The guns are at Gene Richins. So what happens with that is that they are both tied to it and that neither of them can fight for your boys. 2 birds, 1 stone. Katie stole them and Gene's in possession of stolen property. The defendant replied, bada boom, bada bing. I'm going to call Ronnie right now. Oh my gosh, she's so cheesy. I'm telling you, we got a cartoon villain here. Jesus. Dennis Kouri said, it depends on your brother Ronnie. Same day, in a call placed at 6:56 p.m., the defendant and her uncle discussed whether the defendant's guns were at the marital property. The uncle said, we don't even need Katie to be arrested. All we need is for her to be under investigation. The defendant wondered whether Katie Richins, Benson, would be given a first-time offender bullshit deal. Maybe. The uncle replied, it doesn't matter. Katie loses the boys. This is so sad because the boys just need instability. They need to be in a stable home. Having this whole drama, bouncing back and forth. I don't know. Like his family sounds crazy to me. They sound crazy. On September 12, 2023, in a call placed at 8:44 p.m., the defendant's mother told the defendant that she was back in the saddle with the true crime writer. The true crime writer wants to get information out there in the public right now. The story was going to air, after all, with the unsubstantiated part removed. The defendant started to say, what about Ronnie? The defendant's mother said, because Ronnie told your guy no today. The defendant said, that's why I'm confused. Does he not remember the New Year's Eve party? Yeah, clearly he doesn't, or he doesn't want to participate in this shit. The defendant's mother said, I'm going to refreshen his mind in the morning. In the same call, the defendant learned from her former nanny is doing 2020 tomorrow. Oh, is that like a 2020 Dateline interview or something? And then the defendant's mother is working with Dateline. September 12, 2023, again, same day, but now we're at 9:06 p.m. The defendant and her mother remarked about the day's devastation, gut punch, heartbreak, that the true crime writer was unable to publish that Eric Richins used illicit drugs. The true crime writer and her researcher are doing everything they can to get it out there in the media to turn around. At least if we have the public on our side, that's a plus. The true crime writer had been so sure that the two girls would provide evidence that Eric Richins used illicit drugs, but they turned out to be no-goes. Oh, we're filing the next day, September 13, 2023. In a video call placed at 7:47 a.m., the defendant held letter number 2, page by page, up to the video camera. Oh, this is the one that for sure gets her in trouble because they're like, what the fuck is going on over there? What is she doing in her cell? Neither the defendant nor her mother spoke. Hi, Yoshi. How are you doing today? How's it going? In a call placed at 11:10 a.m., the defendant explained to her brother, I really need you to get those receipts. I'm not blowing this out of proportion. Ramzi Hamidi needs this. I think that's the other attorney. Our chances aren't looking very good without it. At approximately 3:30 p.m., the defendant experienced a migraine headache. EMS transported her to the hospital. Upon her return from the hospital, the defendant was held in medical observation cell instead of her normal jail cell. September 14th, the sheriff's deputy searched the defendant's cell while she was being held in medical exam observation cell. Sergeant Jeremy Thomas found the Walk the Dog letter in the defendant's LSAT book. Sergeant Braxton Barrett inspected the defendant's attorney folder, and it did not contain the Walk the Dog letter. I think Kouri Richins was trying to say that the Walk the Dog letter was in this attorney folder that was designated for her attorney, Sky Lazaro. September 15, 2023, at 4:12 p.m., the state filed a motion for a no-contact order, citing the Walk the Dog letter, and filed it as an exhibit because the state accused her of witness tampering, but they never charged her with it, from my understanding. September 15, the True Crime Writers podcast aired. The defendant's mother was happy with it. On September 15, 2023, the defendant's mother gave an hour-long interview to the Daily Mail and told them what no other witness would say. Eric Richins used opioids, pain pills, and bought them off the street. On September 15, 2023, in a text message received at 5:29 p.m., Dennis Kouri, the uncle, told the defendant, stop writing. Oh, is it because, like, maybe she didn't know the Walk the Dog letter was already out there and everyone else found out about it and they're like, okay, you need to chill out and don't do some shit, okay? Bobby says, I randomly watched 3 videos in 24 hours about how fighting over custody caused a person to kill the husband, solidify my belief in Charlie Adelson's guilt. I can't imagine what the Richins family has to go through because of this. The book is the greatest insult. Note, great, good, great in size. Yeah, I feel so bad for the Richins family. I hope they have custody of the boys and I hope the boys are doing good. But Jesus, they have to go back and forth in this like custody battle. Or like imagine if Kouri is found not guilty. Like, oh man, I feel so bad for the boys. You just need to have a stable living environment with some stable people. Oh, good. They sent in my prescription. Yay. Nice. Beginning shortly before midnight on September 15 and continuing through October 26, Sky Lazaro filed a motion to enforce order and for contempt sanctions. Reply in support of motion to enforce order and for contempt sanctions. Opposition to order to motion for no contact order. Motion dismissed due to prosecutorial misconduct. Ms. Lazaro did not assert in any of the filings that the Walk the Dog letter was privileged attorney-client communication or attorney work product privilege. I bet you, the Richins family probably was urging her to do it. And she's like, no, no, I'm not doing it. Never in any of the defendant's communications from jail prior to September 16 did the defendant tell any person that she was writing a fictional mystery book about her experiences on this case. So again, she was trying to say the Walk the Dog letter was part of a fictional mystery book that she was writing about how her and her dad went to Mexico and got fentanyl and all this shit. On September 16, in a call placed at 6:56 p.m., the defendant told her mother that letter number 2 was in her LSAT book and that the Walk the Dog letter was in her attorney folder. The defendant explained that the Walk the Dog letter was not a letter to you guys. Those are part of my freaking book. Like, I wrote how basically my whole story until the detention hearing, and then I changed at the detention hearing that I got out. Like, I was writing this fictional mystery book. I got out on bail, and then, like, I go to Mexico. I'm, like, trying to find, like, these drugs and, like, this whole big story. Then I get in this, like, Mexican prison because I wasn't supposed to leave the country. The defendant's mother incredulously replied, So, do you know what 6 pages I'm talking about? The defendant added that the fictional mystery book was in her attorney folder because the defendant didn't really know what she can and can't write, and that's why it says something about football and Eric. The request for crust white strips because all we do is drink coffee in Mexican prison. So she was trying to say that she wasn't asking her attorney to, smuggle in some crust white strips. Half the story's true, but there's like lots of part that aren't. The defendant explained in the book, To Hell and Back, had a disclaimer on it that the fiction cannot be used against the defendant in her criminal case. Yeah, just because you write it in there doesn't mean they can't use it against you. All 65 pages of the fictional mystery book were folded over the side. In the same call, the defendant's mother said that she told Sky Lazaro if the defendant put something on paper it's because she's scared for her life. The defendant replied, exactly, yeah. That same day, in a call place at 7:40 p.m., the defendant and her mother continued to discuss the walk the dog letter. The defendant's mother told Ms. Lazaro that she wanted to kick the defendant in the teeth and punch her, call her, what a stupid bitch, for putting that on paper. Ms. Lazaro replied, well, I'm not mad at Kouri for that. September 17, 2023, the defendant reiterated that the walk the dog letter was taken out of a middle of a fictional mystery book. September 19, 2023, in a call placed at 11:46 a.m., the defendant expanded upon the fictional mystery book narrative to Ronnie. After listening to the defendant's explanation, the brother asked, does mom know about this? The brother said, well, she clearly was not listening because she has not told me that. She wasn't listening to you at all. She's still calling it a letter. September 19, 2023, in a call placed at 12:26 p.m., the defendant told her brother she was going to tell the attorney, I don't care if Miss Lazaro needs to post or file the fictional mystery book. The defendant said, because I don't care. It's like super sloppy rough draft. October 26, 2023, Ms. Lazaro filed a memorandum in opposition to the state's motion for good cause disclosure, seeking production of the defendant's purported 65-page mystery book. Ms. Lazaro claimed that the 65-page mystery book was a privileged attorney-client communication, but did not include the walk the dog letter in this claim. Ms. Lazaro does not claim any attorney work product privilege either. Ms. Lazaro first asserted the walk the dog letter was privileged attorney-client communication and attorney work product privilege on May 17th, the day she withdrew from the case. Oh man. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to assert this claim. However, I'll have the people taking over this case. They can back it up. Peace out. Bye. See ya. I'll see you guys later. By the time the letter had been filed in the discovery file in the public record for 8 months. 8 months! The defendant has never asserted any communication from jail that the walk the dog was a communication to Ms. Lazaro or any attorney or contained a communication from Ms. Lazaro or any attorney. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait for this trial to happen. There's so much crazy shit in here. It's wild. It's reality TV, man. It's crazy. Okay. The defendant has never asserted a communication to Ms. Lazaro or any of the attorneys, asked to prepare the walk the dog letter for any purpose, including anticipation of litigation or for trial. Oh man. In early September 2023, the defendant and her mother were working up to gin up evidence that Kouri Richins used illicit drugs, manipulate the media to win public support, and undermine the juvenile proceedings involving the defendant and Kouri Richins' three sons to obtain guardianship. Their scheme collapsed when Sergeant Thomas found the walk the dog letter. The defendant's mother lamented afterwards, why she wrote it all down, I don't know. What a stupid bitch for putting that on paper. Mom is pissed. Oh, man. The walk the dog letter does not contain any confidential communication. The walk the dog letter contains 5 sentences. They may purport to represent Ms. Lazaro's confidential communications. The defendant presented absolutely no evidence, however. These 5 sentences actually represent Ms. Lazaro's confidential communications. The court can infer that Ms. Lazaro did not testify on this issue at the evidentiary hearing because they were not, in fact, her confidential communications. It is unlikely that Ms. Lazaro would suggest a theory that Kouri Richins used illicit drugs when extensive extensive evidence that she had in discovery, including defendant's own statements, her basically telling everyone that Eric does not use illicit drugs and that he only takes gummies, and through investigation showed that he did not use illicit drugs. Her own damn statements, man. Her own fucking statements. And if the walk the dog letter indeed contained Miss Lazzaro's theory, then she would certainly have been mad. The defendant disclosed her theory in a letter to her mother. Here, however, Miss Lazzaro was not mad at the defendant for writing the letter. Yeah, she wasn't mad. Because she knew that Kouri was just doing some dumb shit. Kouri is a textbook example of a Dunning-Kruger effect. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? That maybe sounds familiar? It's going good. You're just getting ready before I go to class in a bit. Oh, class day. What classes do we got today? The court cannot take the 5 sentences that may purport to represent Ms. Lazzaro's communication at face value. At the bottom, the defendant is not credible. Not even close to credible. Moreover, the defendant has placed thousands of phone calls and text messages from the jail and not once said that a walk the dog letter contained a communication from Ms. Lazzaro or was prepared in Ms. Lazzaro's direction. Accordingly, the defendant has not met her burden to demonstrate the letter contains any confidential communications. Oh my gosh, Salsa, hi, how are you doing today? Are you just joining us? Salsa, you gotta rewind back and listen to this court talk. This shit is wild. The walk the dog letter is not a confidential communication. The defendant plainly wrote the walk the dog letter to her mother, not her attorney. The defendant addresses her mother throughout the letter. True, she did. For example, I love you, I love you, I love you. Hang in there. We're getting there slowly. You're the best mom in the whole world. I'm so lucky to have you. In contrast, the defendant refers to Miss Lazzaro, her attorney at the time, in the third person throughout the letter. For example, the brother will need to tell Sky at the meeting next week. Have the conversation with the brother before he meets with Sky. Then tell him to tell Sky at the meeting about the conversation. Oh, man. Moreover, the walk the dog letter does not seek legal assistance from an attorney as established in Section C infra. The letter seeks to tamper with witness testimony, manipulate publicity to influence potential jurors, and retaliate against Eric Richins' family. Accordingly, the walk the dog letter is not a confidential attorney communication. The walk the dog letter is not attorney work product privilege. Utah's procedural rules codify that attorney work product doctrines as documents and tangible things, preparations prepared in anticipation of litigation or for trial by or for another attorney, involving mental impressions, conclusions, opinions, or legal theories of an attorney. So they're saying that the walk the dog letter is not Sky Lazzaro's attorney work product. The defendant did not write the walk the dog letter in anticipation of litigation or for trial. The defendant presented absolutely no evidence that she wrote the walk the dog letter in anticipation of litigation or for trial. At the bottom, Ms. Lazzaro did not testify on the issue. The theory that Eric Richins used illicit drugs as the non-starter, and the court cannot take the letter as face value. Accordingly, the defendant failed to meet her burden to demonstrate the walk the dog letter is attorney work product privilege. Now, they're saying that she wrote it to witness tamper. Defendant believed that she needed to show at trial that Eric Richins used illicit drugs. Throughout the day on September 12th, the defendant learned that her brother and her 2 best friends, among others, were unable to provide evidence that Eric Richins used illicit drugs. In particular, she learned that Ronnie Darden, the brother, wasn't much help when he spoke with Ms. Lazzaro's investigator. The defendant became agitated and responded, "Why the hell did Ronnie say that? I told Ronnie I needed him to talk to the investigator." That afternoon, the defendant's mother reminded the defendant that we need actual proof. Ronnie doesn't have it. Nobody has it. The defendant nudged and prodded Ronnie Darden. Think back. In the evening, the defendant's mother again reminded the defendant that Ronnie told you guy, Ronnie told you guy no today. Your guy no today. The defendant went to bed believing that her mother would refreshen Ronnie Darden's mind in the morning. Dunning-Kruger, when someone has very little skill or knowledge, overestimates their abilities because they're too dumb to realize how dumb they are. Is that from like a book or something, or like a movie? Oh, you were lurking? Thank you! I know. It sounds like a reality TV drama. It sounds so unfucking real. The defendant realized two things during her September 12, 11:02 a.m. call with her mother. First, the brother did not provide the investigator evidence that Eric Richins used illicit drugs. And second, she can transmit a writing out of jail without monitoring by holding it up to a camera during a video call. She thought she outsmarted the system. Accordingly, she then decided to write a letter to her mother that would refreshen Ronnie Darden's mind with explicit instructions regarding what to say about Eric Richins using illicit drugs. On September 13, she was transported to the hospital. She did not return to her jail cell until sheriff's deputies had found the walk the dog letter. Accordingly, the defendant wrote the letter during sometime the 28 hours between realizing that she could transmit a letter to her mother without being monitored and being transported to the hospital. The walk the dog letter instructed the defendant's mother how to proceed with the brother when it became apparent that he was not getting it, and none of her other friends could provide any evidence that Eric had used drugs, illicit drugs. The defendant's written instructions as to how the brother needed to testify are entirely consistent with our conversations throughout that day on September 12. The brother was not getting it, despite the defendant's not so subtle remarks. So the defendant spelled it out in the walk the dog letter with the intention of surreptitiously transmitting the letter out of jail using a video call. The walk the dog letter plain language betrays that the defendant wrote it to instruct her brother to testify falsely and how to testify falsely. Why else would the defendant tell her, the brother, the content of the conversation in which he purportedly participated, and then tell him the duration of the conversation, and then allow that he could reword the testimony however he needed to make a point? And why provide him with the background of the conversation that he would never have known? Why would the defendant need to counsel her brother to not overanalyze it? Why repeat upon information and belief? LOL, because she was making fun of it, okay? Witness tampering occurs when someone attempts to induce or otherwise cause another individual to testify or inform falsely. Here, the defendant's false testimony, writing a false testimony for her brother, having just figured out how to transmit that false testimony to him, constitutes an attempt to cause her brother to testify falsely. Oh boy. She wrote the walk the dog letter to influence the public. She was buoyed. I hate this word. Buoyed. She was buoyed just by learning that People magazine article turns people's heads, and some who read it now believe the defendant is 100% innocent. She was cognizant of that. If Sky doesn't come through, at least we have the public and there's hope. She knew that her family and their friends were working with the media to publish the defendant's narrative, including her former nanny doing 2020 and her mother working with Dateline, her brothers interviewing before television cameras, and the true crime writer's constant chatter. The defendant's written instruction in the walk the dog letter regarding publicity are entirely consistent with her conversation throughout the day on September 11 to 12. She instructed her three best friends to tell Good Morning America that Eric bragged about doing pills in high school. What high school? This would have been like 15 years later. Eric put the drugs in the defendant's suitcase when they traveled, and that Eric was looking for drugs the whole time they were in Spain. Like the People magazine article, the defendant wanted Good Morning America interview to make her look good as Eric Richins' expense. The walk the dog letter orchestrated a publicity plan, not a litigation plan. True. Oh, is this a psychology term? Really? I took psychology so many times. I've never heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Thank you. I will add it to my list. The defendant spoke at length on September 12, 2023, retaliating against Kouri Richins Benson. In connection with the pending guardianship proceeding involving the defendant and Eric Richins' three sons, she plotted to have Katie criminally charged for stealing guns as a way for the Darden family members to prevail over Richins' family members in pending guardianship proceeding. If Ronnie Darden didn't gather the gun receipts, it would be all his fault if the Darden family lost guardianship. I wonder if Ronnie is like the bullied one in the family. The defendant's written instructions in the walk the dog letter regarding retaliation against the Richins family are entirely consistent with our conversations throughout the day on September 12. The defendant specifically wrote about the gun receipts scheme. Don't forget to work on the gun receipts. We want to file charges and let the prosecution not do anything about it or use it in our defense. This is not a litigation strategy. It's not even tethered to the real world. The defendant also instructed in the walk the dog letter. One way to get at Katie is going through my phone and finding a picture of her girls, even with the boys. Print copies and send them out anonymously to the different media companies. Obviously, don't email the picture so it's not traceable. She would be livid if it went out to the public. You would just have to do it sneakily and be careful. Jesus, like she doesn't even care about the kids. Doesn't give a shit about the kids at all. I mean, like, let alone her own kids, but like, I know, like, I know she doesn't care about, like, you know, her nieces or nephews, or nieces, right? Kids, girls, yeah, nieces. She doesn't even care about her own boys. Print the pictures, leak them out everywhere. The walk the dog letter does not contain attorneys' mental impressions, conclusions, opinions, or legal theories. It has 5 sentences that may purport to present Ms. Lazzaro's mental impressions, conclusions, opinions, or legal theories. These are the same 5 sentences that may purport to represent Ms. Lazzaro's confidential communications. As discussed in Section A1 Supra, the defendant presented absolutely no evidence that the walk the dog letter actually contains Ms. Lazzaro's mental impressions, conclusions, opinions, or legal theories. At the bottom, Ms. Lazzaro did not testify on the issue. I'm going to actually copy this. I remember. Work. How are you guys doing today? I told you guys this shit was wild, wasn't it? Or isn't it? Attorney work product privilege. This is just like the tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg. At the bottom, Ms. Lazzaro did not testify on the issue. The theory that Eric Richins used illicit drugs is a non-starter, and the court cannot take the letter at face value. Accordingly, the defendant failed to meet her burden to demonstrate the walk the dog letter is attorney work product privilege. The walk the dog letter is also not part of a 65-page fictional mystery book. The motion asserts that the walk the dog letter is part of a purported 65-page fictional mystery book that the court previously found privileged, and that the letter thus fall under the court's prior ruling. The only evidence that the walk the dog letter is part of a supposed book is the defendant's outlandish and self-serving narrative. The defendant is not a reliable source of evidence about the walk the dog or the fictional mystery book. First, the walk the dog letter is plainly consistent with the defendant's September 11 to 13 discussions with her mother about tampering with witness testimony, manipulating public to influence potential jurors, and retaliating against the Eric Richins family. And not at all like reading a fictional mystery book. I don't think we ever got a copy of the fictional mystery book, the 65 pages. Second, not even the defendant's family believed the fictional mystery book narrative, neither should the court. When confronted with the defendant's explanation, the defendant's mother asked, "Do you know what 6 pages we're talking about?" 3 days later, the defendant's mother had not bothered to repeat the defendant's fictional mystery book narrative to the brother, who told the defendant, "Mom is still calling it a letter." Upon hearing that the fictional mystery book described in the 4th of July celebration in Mexico, the brother keenly remarked, "That doesn't make any sense." That's right, because 4th of July... it's an American thing. Why would they celebrate American independence in Mexico? Unless there's like a lot of Americans living in that little town. Finally, each page of the walk the dog is no. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking. Finally, each page of the walk the dog letter is numbered in the defendant's handwriting 1 through 6. The defendant's claim that the walk the dog letter was taken from the middle of the 65-page fictional mystery book, despite being numbered 1 through 6, defies reason. Moreover, the walk the dog letter was tri-folded. The defendant said the fictional mystery book was folded together at the side. The 6-page walk the dog letter is undoubtedly distinct from the 65-page fictional mystery book. The defendant waived any privilege claim to the walk the dog letter. It is perfectly clear that once privileged material is disclosed, the privilege of the non-disclosure is waived. The attorney work product privilege is not absolute and may be waived. In determining the applicability of the attorney work product privilege, the court must consider attorney involvement and the primary motivating purpose behind the creation of the document. When the attorney or the client asserts the work product privilege to thwart the integrity of the judicial process, that privilege is vitiated. Attorney's opinion work product cannot be privileged if the work was performed in furtherance of a crime, fraud, or other type of misconduct fundamentally inconsistent with the basic premise of the adversary system. Forward through this. In 8 months, let's read this. First, there must be a prima facie showing of violation sufficient to defeat the work product privilege. Second, the court must find some valid relationships between the challenged work product and the prima facie violation. In the 8 months following Sergeant Thomas finding the walk the dog letter, the defendant deployed the letter in motions to have the Summit County Attorney's Office held in contempt, sanctioned, and disqualified entirely, and to change the venue. The defendant later deployed the walk the dog letter to seek to have this entire case dismissed for prosecutorial misconduct. Ms. Lazaro litigated these issues until February 2024 and not once claimed the letter was either privilege, attorney-client communication, or attorney work product privilege. No, I haven't seen Rain lately. Ms. Lazaro never claimed the walk the dog letter is privileged until May 17 when she withdrew as counsel. She was the only person in the world who could immediately recognize the walk the dog letter is privileged if it is what it was. For 8 months, she didn't. The fact that Ms. Lazaro did not claim privilege until she had exhausted the letter's offensive value and no longer had to demonstrate a privilege claim is telling. Yeah, because she was piecing out. She's like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I'll see you guys later. Good luck. The defendant used the letter as a sword and thus waived the assertion 8 months later that the walk the dog letter is shielded by privilege. The defendant further waived any privilege by using the letter to witness tamper as discussed. Yeah, the book is already off the table. The court has already ruled that the 65-page fictional book is attorney-client privilege, I guess. However, the walk the dog letter was separate from the book. It was folded differently as well. And the defense right now is trying to fight and say that the walk the dog letter should also be suppressed. So, hi, Karango. How are you doing today? The walk the dog book. So it's separate. So we have a 65-page mystery book, and then we have the walk the dog 6 pages. Mystery book is attorney-client communication, I think. That's what the court ruled already. And the walk the dog, still up in the air. Still up in the air. I don't think the court has made a ruling yet on that one. Right? Did they? I don't think so. Unless I missed it. This is filed about a month ago. I know. I would be down to read the book. You know, her going to Mexico to celebrate 4th of July because Mexicans totally celebrate Independence Day. That would have been great to read. All right, guys. Well, that is it today. That is it for today. That was a long Kouri Richins stream. Was it that long? I don't know. It was like 3 hours long. So we covered the hearing that happened last week. Motion to suppress phone evidence. Motion to suppress some oral statements made. Motion to suppress an orange notebook that was seized at some point during a search warrant. And then we went through some of the financial evidence that the state wanted to present in the trial. However, I think it's already been ruled though that anything that happens before January 2022, any of the financial stuff can't come in. That has to be like a separate trial for that one. So that's that. And then we went over the walk the dog timeline and why the state believes that it is relevant and it should be part of evidence. Because oh my gosh, going through I can't believe it. All the jailhouse calls, you know, it's like, guys, these are recorded. Chill out. Hey, Ginny, thank you so much for the 81 months. How are you, Ginny? How's it going? Hello. So that is it for today for Kouri Richins. I think for today I will have the videos, but I think I might do separate videos because otherwise it'll just be like a long fat video. So we'll do a separate video for the hearing and then we'll do a separate video for the court document stuff. So if you guys want to watch the entire stream and you just want to get to a certain section that you're interested in, we will have that separately as videos. And guys, yeah, thank you so much for hanging out. That's about it for today. I think though, I'm just going to continue streaming on Twitch until the sun goes down because I need to do garden work, but it's too fucking hot to do garden work right now. I need the sun to go down. Oh man, I think in about like an hour and a half or something. Oh Jesus, I gotta fertilize my fucking garden, my roses. I did half of it already, but I gotta do the other half. So we're gonna end for today on YouTube, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and on Twitch, we'll do some video games. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a good one. Join the Discord if you guys haven't already. Have your notifications on for YouTube. Thank you so much for liking the stream. If you guys enjoyed it, like the stream, subscribe for more content. And I have my Italy vlog coming out soon. And honestly, the Italy vlog is pretty fucking long, but whatever, it is what it is. I'm going to have it on my second channel. So if you guys are on this channel and you haven't subscribed to the second channel yet, you'll probably see it in one of my like end card screens. You know, the thing that pops up at the very end where it's like, oh, subscribe, here's a video, blah, blah, blah. I'll probably put in one of those or something. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. YouTube, have a good one. And I will see you guys later. Bye, y'all. There's so many things I want to cover, and we're so behind. But yeah, I appreciate you guys.